Chapter 195. Tongning. Isn't that Tongning? Why is she back? Oh God. Tongning has also been dragged into this. This is going to be a good show. This is like the textbook version of a civil war. The media turned to Tongning and snapped furiously. At a time like this, at such an exciting time, Tongning had suddenly returned. This model that tore apart every company she went to. She obviously kept a low profile, but wherever she was, there would always be a battlefield. She watched as Tongning approached the podium. She immediately turned to Luo Hao and gestured for him to control the situation and not allow the situation to escalate. So, Chang Tian's security immediately headed towards Tongning. However, to everyone's surprise, Tongning also brought bodyguards with her. Take note, they were professional bodyguards. The security couldn't act rashly. All they could do was watch as Tongning approached the podium. Not too long ago, the two women were so close that they defeated Yang Jing. Yet, in such a short period of time, they had already turned into enemies. In fact, their relationship had worsened to such an ugly degree. Why are you back? Weren't you in London? If I didn't come back, I would have been turned into ashes and lost all my reputation. Tongning removed her sunglasses and looked directly at Lan Shi. Of course, there was a difference in height between the two women. Tongning usually looked down at women. Lan Shi looked at Tongning with hatred in her eyes. At this moment, the situation was no longer in her control. She originally thought that if Tongning personally spoke, she would have the strength to refute her. However, Tongning simply instructed her bodyguards to deal with the security guards that were holding Nzaheo back. She then said to Nzaheo, "Say what you want to say and do what you want to do. Today, I am simply here to protect my friend," Tongning said in a serious tone. "Nzaheo, tell me all your grievances. Once you tell me, you will be free." Nzaheo looked at Tongning, at this unbelievable woman. Back at Hai, she was willing to risk her image and slap Li Danny and her manager for the sake of Long Jie's assistant. Now, for him, she had come all the way from London to stand in front of him and build a wall of safety for him. Nzaheo suddenly felt inspired as he lifted his head and faced the media. At the same time, he pulled out his phone and played the original recording on it. The recording incident is indeed real. I will send this recording for examination later. As for the part about our CEO being jealous of our models, I'm sure everyone is aware of the previous incident with Ling Feng. In order to control Tongning, President Lan suggested that Tongning have dinner with Ling Feng on the eve of the commercial shoot. However, Tongning did not agree. So, a series of troubles followed. Afterwards, Lan Shi began to suppress Tongning. Compared to everything Nzaheo had said, Lan Shi's words were obviously an excuse and an attempt to frame him. "Lan Shi, do you really want evidence?" Nzaheo looked at Lan Shi through the bodyguards with a look of mockery and sadness. Lan Shi was speechless. All of a sudden, she was speechless. If she said she really wanted evidence, then millions of netizens would take the initiative to search for it for Nzaheo. When that time came, she would be beyond redemption. "Did you know? How much I hoped that you had nothing to do with Yunxian. How much I hoped that you had simply lost your mind for a moment. But, seeing how much you tried to slander Tongning, I realized I could no longer remain silent. Tongning simply wants to be a good model. She has never wanted to go against you. But, you have repeatedly hurt her and hurt the people around her. You are even willing to sacrifice me to achieve your goal. So, I hereby announce, I am leaving Changtian Entertainment." Chapter 196. Nzaheo is quitting? A company like this, of course she is quitting. Is she waiting to die? What will happen to Tongning if Nzaheo quits? Tongning is still a model for Changtian. Hearing Nzaheo was quitting, the media began to whisper amongst themselves. Actually, this was understandable because Nzaheo had already exposed all of Changtian's secrets. Regardless of whether these things were the truth or not, for Changtian, it was bound to be a huge blow. Because, no matter what Nzaheo said, it would become a stain on Changtian Entertainment that could never be erased. Their opponents would continue to dig up information until Lan Shi was completely destroyed. Since Nzaheo and Lan Shi had already fallen out to such an extent, there was no way they could continue working together. And Zaheo, did you think, after leaving Changtian, anyone would still want you? You disregarded the company's interests and exposed our secrets. Did you think you could continue to survive in this industry? Lan Shi questioned angrily. Her voice was sharp and trembling. It was harsh and unpleasant to the ears. No one will want you, no one. Lan Shi yelled at Zaheo through the bodyguards. But, so what? Zaheo's expression had never been so calm before. The struggle and pain of the past was finally over. So, Zaheo simply smiled and said to Lan Shi, since I've decided to quit Changtian Entertainment, I've never expected to be a manager again. Lan Shi, you've spent your entire life trying to control other people's lives. Yet, you've failed to control anyone. In the end, you've even thrown yourself away. Zaheo's voice was gentle and steady. Because, from the moment he announced he was quitting Changtian Entertainment, he had already begun his new life. In the end, Zaheo turned to face the media once again and bowed deeply. He then looked at Tongning and said, Tongning is truly a great woman. At least, to me, she is great enough. She is someone that can hold on to her own identity and remain true to herself despite being in the busy industry. She can never be the crazy woman that Lan Shi and the paparazzi are talking about. Tongning loves to walk on the runway because she understands it is her destiny. Originally, she wanted to use Changtian as a platform to fulfill her dreams, but now, all she has received is endless pain from Lan Shi. Towards Lan Shi, I really have nothing to say. I only have one thing to ask everyone. Changtian has hurt Tongning more than it has helped her. This is the truth. From now on, whenever Changtian reports something related to Tongning, I hope everyone does not believe it and cannot believe it. Finally, Zaheo looked at Tongning and asked, What's your choice? She had mentioned before that she was simply here to help a friend. So, she replied, I still need to return to London. Can't you hurry up? The reporters below the stage burst into laughter as they discovered Tongning's attitude. She was indeed a person that didn't like to cause trouble. If she had something to say, she would do it. At a time like this, she did not even think about stepping on Lan Shi. It was clear to see that her magnanimity was indeed worthy of respect. In such a situation, she was actually able to stay out of it completely. It could be seen that she really wanted others to ignore her existence. At this moment, all she wanted to do was help Zaheo find himself. As for the debt between her and Lan Shi, there was still time to settle. Zaheo, you can't leave. You are breaching the contract. Don't forget, your penalty is 3 times the original amount. Lan Shi's arrogance made her think that after Zaheo left Changtian, he would be completely smelly and would no longer be able to survive in the industry. Perhaps, Zaheo could no longer be anyone's manager. But that didn't mean Zaheo's life was over. Zaheo did not say a word. Not long after, a few men dressed in black entered Changtian's lobby. They were a few stylishly dressed foreign men. From the looks of their bodies, they were probably bodyguards. Afterwards, a slightly chubby middle-aged man approached the 4 bodyguards and said to Lan Shi with a big smile, Actually, President Lan, I really want to thank you. Zaheo is my proudest student. I have long wanted him to go to the US to develop his career. He has a talent for drama, so I want him to become a director in the US and enter Hollywood in the future. As for your modeling agency, you can have fun on your own. So, this was Zaheo's decision. Tongning finally let out a sigh of relief. Hey, do you guys recognize who he is? A sharp-eyed reporter immediately recognized the middle-aged man and let out a scream. It's the famous director, Zhu Huanchen. I never thought. Not only did Zaheo do well as a manager, he also has other talents. Hasn't Changtian Entertainment lost a lot of face this time? Lan Shi originally thought Zaheo would starve to death after leaving. In the end, he caught the eye of a famous director and was snatched away by him. What a great slap to the face. I really hope there is a better agency that can snatch Tongning away too. Hairue Entertainment. Mo Ting was sitting in his office looking at the entertainment news. Seeing that Tongning had actually gone to act as a human wall, he couldn't help but reveal a subtle smile. The internet was already in an uproar as people started leaving comments on Tongning's fan club, telling her to quickly find a new agency. She couldn't continue working with Changtian Entertainment. But Tongning actually felt this was the best time to work with them. With Lan Shi's every move being monitored, the restrictions placed on her would be a lot looser. Emoting understood what Tongning was thinking, but it didn't stop him from rejoicing. Even though Tongning didn't leave Chung Tian with Zaheo, it didn't mean she didn't have any plans, especially when the reporter couldn't help but say that he hoped Tongning would find a better agency. In reality, Emoting already had a plan in mind. Of course, this didn't stop Emoting from being happy for Zaheo. Although he could no longer be a manager, he believed Zaheo entering a new field was a new beginning. Perhaps they would have a chance to work together again in the future. Most importantly, the task of helping Tongning look over her contract had once again returned to him. Tongning was always worried that he would get tired, but this would soon become normal. The lobby of Changtian Entertainment was already in a mess, especially as Zaheo and Tongning prepared to leave Changtian. Luo Hao watched as the two left under the watchful eyes of the media. But, in his eyes, Tongning and Zaheo were stepping over Lan Shi's flesh and blood as they walked out the door. Did they think they could leave just like that? How could it be that easy? Everyone had forgotten about the artist's director standing in the corner. He was the most terrifying person in Changtian. Chapter 197. Tongning, although I can no longer be your manager, the time I've spent as your manager has been an unforgettable experience. I am very happy and very lucky. As they left Changtian, Zaheo stretched out his hand towards Tongning and waved it, gesturing for her to shake it. Tongning let out a gentle laugh as she held onto Zaheo's hand and tilted her head. To be honest, you are indeed an outstanding manager. If it wasn't for Lan Shi's scheme, I would never have let you go. Zaheo let go of Tongning's hand. For a moment, he was still unwilling to give up. I once thought I could accompany you to the end. At least, I thought I could help you become a supermodel. But it doesn't matter. Even if I don't take this position, there are plenty of people who are willing. Aren't you aware? You have a wife-slave at home. I am also a wife-slave, okay? Tongning retorted unwillingly. I will continue to pay attention to you. If you have any difficulties, give me a call. If one day you decide you don't want to be a model anymore and want to be an actress, you can come look for me. Perhaps that day will come. Tongning felt nothing was impossible. Okay, I need to go. Tongning, I know you didn't say anything today because you didn't want Lan Shi to come back and beg you. After all, you said you would make her kneel before you. But you need to pay attention to Luo Hao. He is more patient than Yang Jing and Lan Shi. Tongning smiled mysteriously. Of course, she wasn't Lan Shi. She was able to keep her guard up. So, Zaheo had nothing to worry about. After all, she still had Emoting by her side. Hurry up and go. I still need to go back and accompany my wife's slave. Zaheo's lips curved upwards as he gently hugged Tongning. Finally, under Tongning and Long Jie's blessings, he set off again. In reality, Zaheo had a feeling that even if Lan Shi hadn't set him up, he wouldn't have been able to watch Tongning walk down the path of a supermodel. Because there was someone else that was more than willing to do it. And the good Tongning deserved the best treatment. Let's go, Tongning. It's time for us to head to the airport. Long Jie reminded Tongning that her work in London was not over yet. They had already applied for time off, so they couldn't keep the photographers and models waiting for her. I want to go see Emoting. Do you miss him? Long Jie winked at Tongning. Tongning nodded her head without hiding anything. Let's go. Long Jie happily agreed as she drove Tongning to Hairue Entertainment. However, along the way, all she heard on the radio was about Chung Tian's press conference. The discussions repeatedly revolved around her, Lan Shi, and Zaheo. In fact, the discussions were all one-sided. This time, Lan Shi was in big trouble. Today's press conference was a great way to vent our anger. Otherwise, who knows how much more dirty water Lan Shi would have thrown at us. Tongning thought about how Lan Shi was already on the verge of collapsing as they left the venue. Her expression naturally turned cold. A person like Lan Shi would never admit that she was wrong. She simply believed that she had lost to timing and luck. Where is Lan Shi now? Haha, you don't know? After we left, the reporters surrounded Lan Shi. In the end, there was a small accident and Lan Shi was hit by a camera. She is now in the hospital. Long Jie laughed. So, are you still angry? Tongning suddenly asked Long Jie. It sounded a little strange, but after a short pause, Long Jie came to her senses. She understood Tongning was doing this to avenge her for kneeling to Hai Yi. I haven't been angry for a long time. Who am I? Do you think a person that has nothing to do with me is worth my anger? Tongning lifted her head and glanced at Long Jie. She knew Long Jie was naturally optimistic, so she did not say anything else. As long as Long Jie could make it to the hospital, she would feel better. But, thinking about Lu Che's injured knee, Tongning couldn't help but remind, when you pass by a pharmacy, buy some medicine for Lu Che. That day, when he came to deliver your passport, he injured his knee. What? Long Jie was a little nervous as she quickly stepped on the brakes. Tongning glared at her as she restarted the car. In that case, I'll look for a pharmacy nearby. Tongning did not say a word. She looked at Long Jie as if to say, do as you see fit. Long Jie smiled awkwardly. She realized her reaction was a little too extreme. Originally, the atmosphere was relaxed and carefree. However, an anxious voice suddenly came from the radio. Host, can you help me contact Tongning? I need to talk to her. It's urgent. Not only Tongning, even the host thought it was a fan. So he comforted. I'm sorry, miss. A program like ours can't possibly invite Tongning. But I'm really in a hurry. She promised to save my life. Hearing this, the host was confused. He thought it was a crazy fan. So he disconnected the line and tried to ease the atmosphere before contacting the next listener. Of course, Tongning did not take the matter to heart. After all, she had a lot of fans, and there were also a lot of fans that would share stories with her. Sometimes, it was impossible to tell the truth from the lies. After a 40-minute car ride, Long Jie escorted Tongning to Hai Rui. At the same time, Long Jie anxiously followed behind Tongning with some medicine. Inside the elevator, Lu Che looked at Tongning in surprise as she stepped out of the elevator. Madam, why haven't you left yet? Isn't your flight at 4:30 p.m.? Where's Imo Ting? He's in the waiting room. Lu Che was holding some medicine in his hand when he realized he was going to hide it. But Tongning had already seen it. Is Imo Ting not feeling well? Tongning immediately furrowed her brows as she looked at him anxiously. Actually, it's not a big problem. He just gets a migraine from time to time. Why has he never mentioned it at home? Why does it rarely hurt? In that case, he definitely didn't tell you. As you know, he can't bear to do things like that. Lu Che laughed as he handed the tray to Tongning. In that case, I'll leave this to the madam. At this moment, Tongning had no other thoughts in her mind. She ran straight to the waiting room. Meanwhile, Long Jie and Lu Che, who were left behind, looked at each other awkwardly. Long Jie turned her face away and pretended to look at the rainbow in the sky. However, she still threw the medicine in her hand at Lu Che. Lu Che was confused. What is this? Didn't you hurt your knee? Lu Che continued to unpack the medicine. Looking at the medicine inside, he realized it didn't only contain medicine for external injuries, there were also medicines for colds, fevers, headaches, and fever, as well as rheumatism. I accidentally bought too much. Take it as a reward for taking care of Tongning. But the big miss, who thanked someone by treating them to medicine. Inside the waiting room, a figure was lying quietly on the black bed. He no longer had the majestic presence of a king. Instead, he was holding his head in his hands from the pain. Ting. Tongning hurried over. Chapter 198. Under the dim lighting, Imo Ting heard this familiar voice. He resisted the pain in his head and calmed his expression. He turned around and looked at Tongning. Shouldn't we board the plane? Perhaps Imo Ting couldn't tell, but Tongning could hear every change in his voice. It was the pain he was suppressing. Tongning's throat felt like it was on fire. She was afraid that her words would sound like she was about to cry, so she put down the medicine in her hands and sat on the headboard. She then struggled to help Imo Ting's body up and pulled him into her embrace, wrapping her arms tightly around him. Take the medicine first. Imo Ting's attention was distracted, and he began to panic, especially when Tongning's tears landed on his shoulder. He quickly turned around, but Tongning held him back. Take your medicine. Imo Ting did not continue to struggle. He simply took the medicine and water. Tongning watched as he swallowed the medicine. She reached out her arms and hugged his head, gently rubbing it as she placed her lips against his hair. Immerse closed his eyes. At this time, he no longer had the energy to explain. After resting for half an hour, the medicine finally took effect and Immerse gradually recovered. He struggled out of Tongning's embrace and turned to look at her. Tongning's eyes were still filled with tears as she looked at Immerse without saying a word. It only hurts occasionally. It's not that serious. I just had a checkup not long ago. I don't know. Tongning lowered her head as her tears fell onto Immerse's arm. Seeing you in so much pain made me anxious. I don't know what else I can do for you. Tongning wasn't a person that liked to cry. Whenever she came across a problem, she would face it calmly. Only when it came to Immerse would she react so strongly. Immerse pulled her into his embrace and hugged her tightly. His hand ran down her back as he comforted her. I'll lose my mind if I see you in pain. Hearing this, Immerse suddenly came to a realization. It turned out, keeping himself healthy was also a way to protect Tongning. After all, Tongning's tears didn't land on the back of his hand. Instead, they landed on his heart like a hammer. Immerse hugged her and waited for her to calm down. After quite some time, he finally said in a hoarse voice beside her ear later, I'll ask Lu Che to arrange for you to go to the hospital for a checkup. Tongning did not say a word. She simply bit down hard on Immerse's neck. Immerse was already used to her venting in this way. As long as he caused her emotions to fluctuate, whether it was excitement or anger, she would respond in this way. Tongning bit down on the thin layer of skin, refusing to let go. Immerse let her do as she pleased. He smiled and hugged her tightly. It's okay. I feel a lot better after taking the medicine. Tongning finally let out a sigh of relief. Her heart ached again. Immerse turned his head and looked at the alarm clock on the bedside table. He quickly said to Tongning, I'll take you to the airport, otherwise it'll be too late. Tongning still didn't want to get up, but Immerse carried her off the bed. After tidying up a little, he led her out of the waiting room. Inside the office, Longjie and Lu Che were still awkwardly staring at each other. As soon as they saw Tongning being carried out of the office, Longjie immediately ran over. What's wrong? What happened? Wasn't Big Boss sick? How did Tongning end up being the weak one? I'll take you to the airport now. Longjie, take good care of Tongning. Longjie didn't understand the situation in front of her, so all she could do was respond blankly. The group quickly boarded the car, but Tongning remained quiet the entire way. Immerse could tell she hadn't recovered from her earlier emotions. So, as they waited at a red light, he reached out his hand and patted her long hair to comfort her. Soon, they arrived at the airport. To avoid being discovered by the media, Immerse parked the car in a secluded spot and gestured for Longjie to come over immediately. Longjie received Big Boss's signal and immediately got out of the car. She then pulled Tongning out. Our work in London will end in 2 to 3 days. We can't drag it out any longer. Tongning did not say a word. Her expression was calm. As she stepped out of the car, she did not look at Immerse's expression. It seemed she was afraid she would regret it. However, as soon as they stepped into the airport, Tongning suddenly asked, Longjie, I'm still worried. What should I do? Longjie reacted for a moment. She was a little surprised, but she quickly smiled. Tongning, you know better than I do. When a person is hesitating and doesn't choose the outcome they want, they will often regret it. For example, when the weather is about to change before you leave, and you are hesitating to bring an umbrella, if you don't bring one, it will definitely rain. Or, if you want to chase after someone, if you don't turn around right now, you may miss out on the moment he needs you the most. After hearing Longjie's words, Tongning left the queue without hesitation and ran over to where she had just left the car. Luckily, because of the traffic, Immerse's car had not completely left the airport. Tongning ran over without hesitation, pulled open the car door and sat down in her original seat. Immerse was a little surprised. Why did you come back? Tell Lu Che to immediately arrange for an examination. Before I see the results, I won't leave in peace. Tongning finally said in seriousness, For you, this is a small matter. But I've been worried about going overseas. Do you think it's still too small? Immerse stretched out his hand and gently stroked Tongning's cheek. He had once again given up on resisting. How could he have the heart to chase someone away when they had already sent her all the way back? So, he immediately asked Lu Che to contact the hospital. Accompanied by Tongning, they both went to the hospital for an examination. In the end, they received a report. There were no abnormalities. However, due to her high concentration at work, her brain would occasionally protest. "Do you feel completely at ease now?" Emoting asked as he held onto Tongning's shoulder. "It's really just a small matter." Tongning looked at Emoting and felt relieved. But, thinking about his headache, Tongning grabbed onto Emoting's arm and said, "Come with me to England. I will work and make sure you rest." Emoting sighed. He felt heartache and helplessness towards Tongning. Okay. As soon as Lu Che heard this, he was a little surprised. He thought to himself, his CEO used to be unshakable and had never been shaken by anyone. Yet, he had now completely fallen into a henpecked husband. But this was a good thing, a really good thing. Perhaps the only person in the world that could make Emoting listen to him was Tongning. In the end, Tongning missed her flight. So, Emoting had no choice but to ask Lu Che to arrange for a private jet, so she wouldn't miss her flight. Inside the luxurious cabin, Lu Che and Long Jie sat on opposite ends of the plane. One was reading documents, and the other was watching videos. Meanwhile, Emoting was lying in Tongning's arms. This was the first time Tongning spread open her arms and hugged him to sleep. With the help of the hospital security, the couple returned to Changtian Entertainment. When he entered the hall, his assistant was waiting at the door. When he saw Luo Hao, he immediately greeted him. He pointed to the girl pacing back and forth in the hall and said, "It's her." Luo Hao nodded. After sending Lan Shi back to her office, he walked over to the girl and asked, "Miss, I heard you were in a hurry to find Tongning? Why?" Hearing Luo Hao's question, the long-haired girl quickly stood up and said, "I'm looking for her to save a life." "Save what life? Can you give me her contact information?" The man asked Luo Hao sincerely. "Please do me a favor." Luo Hao was silent for a few seconds before replying, "I'm sorry. I am the company's director and Tongning is a model. For the sake of Tongning's safety, I can't reveal her private information to you. However, you can tell me what happened and I will help you pass on the message. As for whether she's willing to contact you, that will depend on her." The woman was a little troubled, but she understood Luo Hao's difficulties. So, she decided to tell him the truth. "It's because Tongning promised to save someone. But I can't tell you who this person is. She is currently in a critical situation, so I decided to contact Changtian. I've already contacted Tongning through various channels, but she's too famous at the moment. It's too difficult to see her. I hope you can tell her that no matter what the Han family has done, at least that person hasn't wronged her. Since she promised to save someone, she shouldn't go back on her word." "What illness? Why didn't you ask the hospital for help? If I could, then I wouldn't need to look for Tongning. Anyway, I hope you can pass on my message. Thank you." After speaking, the woman wrote down her contact details and handed it to Luo Hao. She then gave Luo Hao a deep bow before leaving Changtian's lobby. Luo Hao looked at the number in his hand. Without a word, he crumpled the note into a ball and threw it into the bin. Surnamed Han, Luo Hao returned to his office and immediately instructed his assistant to look into Han Yufan's information. It didn't take long before he found out that Han Yufan had a younger sister. Most importantly, she was seriously ill. Looking at the information his assistant handed him, Luo Hao suddenly leaned back in his chair. Sometimes, one could wear out iron shoes and fruitless searching only to find what they were looking for without even looking. Tongning, this time, let's see who can keep their composure and who will emerge victorious. Of course, he couldn't possibly tell Tongning about this woman's request. London, Tongning was filming a fashion blockbuster on the streets. As the last model to appear on JK Fashion Week, in a short period of time, she had become famous in the fashion industry and received countless resources. Mo Ting was dressed in a trench coat as he sat by the side of the street. He had no work to do, so he was relaxed. All he could do was follow the filming crew and secretly follow his wife. After filming her blockbuster, Tongning turned around to look for Ting. However, he was nowhere to be found. Tongning grabbed her phone from Long Jia and quickly sent Ting a message. Where are you? Can't I even go to the bathroom? Ting smiled. Tongning was in a good mood as she teased. Don't run around. Be careful that I don't want you anymore. Find your own way home. Ting was relaxed, but Lu Che was busy. Similarly, in London, Ting was out shopping while Lu Che was in a hotel, helping Ting hold video conferences and recording important events. Madam, if this goes on, I'm going to get a migraine. Warong's reporter had no idea what Tongning was up to 2 days ago. It wasn't easy for him to finally find out about her schedule. So, he was currently rushing over to Tongning's workplace. According to Tongning's mysterious schedule, she definitely wasn't simply working. Plus, even though he was so strict, Tongning still managed to avoid his cameras and return to Beijing from this. One could see how cautious she was. But the more cautious she was, the more curious he became about Tongning. He refused to believe that Tongning would always be so cautious. As for the man that drove her to the airport in the US, he was definitely going to appear again. Chapter 200. In order to find out Han Xiner's exact situation, Luo Hao asked someone to find the woman's contact details from the bin. Without anyone knowing, he found her home address. The man obviously didn't expect Luo Hao to personally visit. He thought Tongning had some news, so when he invited Luo Hao in, he was all smiles. Are you here to tell me that Xiner can be saved? Luo Hao looked at the woman's innocent face and gently curved his lips. Can you tell me about Han Xiner's situation? The girl thought for a moment and sat down on the sofa next to Luo Hao. She explained to him, Xin and I met in high school. Later, we went abroad to study together. But Xin's kidney has always been bad. All the donors we found failed to match. Afterwards, Xiner's illness flared up and we returned to China. Afterwards, Han Yufan brought Tongning here to do a match for Xiner. So many people failed, but Tongning's kidney was a complete success. The woman lowered her head and sighed. Afterwards, we all found out about what happened at Tianyi. Xiner knew her brother had wronged Tongning, so she never mentioned asking Tongning for a kidney transplant again. She knew the Han family owed Tongning a lot. Because of this, Xiner had a complete falling out with the Han family. Right now, she's all alone in the hospital. Actually, I've wanted to look for Tongning for a long time, but Xiner kept stopping me. Recently, Xiner's health has been getting worse. I was afraid she wouldn't be able to hold on, so I tried all sorts of methods to look for Tongning. Isn't Tongning a model from your agency? That's why I came looking for you. The woman was a complete outsider to the industry, so she had no idea about the undercurrents within. All she knew was that Tongning belonged to Cheng Tian, but she had no idea how bad her relationship with Cheng Tian was. I've been holding it in for a long time. Since Tongning has personally agreed, you should at least give me an explanation. The doctor said that for a normal person, one kidney is more than enough to keep their body functioning. After hearing the woman's words, Luo Hao weighed the situation in his heart and asked, is her condition serious? Her kidneys are failing too badly. She's already in the middle stage of uremia. Dialysis won't be able to relieve much of her pain. The girl said, her voice choking. After hearing this, Luo Hao nodded his head. I've already contacted Tongning, but she doesn't seem to remember what happened and hasn't given me a reply. Plus, she's currently working in England, so I can't talk to her face to face. The girl's expression changed. She pursed her lips and finally nodded. No matter what, thank you. You're welcome. After that, Luo Hao stood up. When he left the girl's house, he accidentally heard the girl say something behind his back. The people in that industry are indeed untrustworthy. Isn't Tongning the same? I just have a migraine. It's not like I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life. Tongning did not say a word. She seemed to be weighing her options. She knew better than Ting that if she missed out on this opportunity, she didn't know when she would get another opportunity like this. In that case, you should rest for another 2 days. Didn't I say I would listen to you when it comes to personal matters? Ting did not refute. He simply whispered in Tongning's ear, I'll take care of the outside. You take care of the inside. Tongning smiled as she found a comfortable position in Emoting's embrace and fell asleep. After an entire day of work, she was too tired. This time, she was one step away from becoming an international supermodel. She really hoped that everything would go smoothly from now on. However, Luo Hao had planted a ticking time bomb. Compared to the warmth and stability of the bedroom, Lu Che and Long Jie, who were still fighting in the study room, were extremely miserable. One had to deal with Hai Rui's trivial matters, while the other had to check on Tongning's contract. However, as Long Jie looked at Lu Che from behind, she couldn't help but let out a laugh. Chapter 201. She seemed to have no idea that in front of her and Lu Che was a piece of glass. From time to time, Lu Che lifted his head and saw Long Jie smiling at him from behind. Her infatuated expression gave him goosebumps. Most importantly, Lu Che turned around and asked Long Jie, "Why do you keep sneaking glances at me?" Hearing this question, Long Jie's mind went blank as her face turned red and she lowered her head. "Lu Che, you bastard. Idiot. Do you really have a negative EQ? Why did you have to say something so embarrassing? Plus, do you really not like me looking at you?" Long Jie's heart was suddenly overwhelmed by this possibility. But, to be able to be alone like this, she was already satisfied. How could she ask for more? With this thought, Long Jie calmed herself down. However, just as she lifted her head and was about to look through Tongning's contract again, a handsome face suddenly appeared in front of her. Long Jie was so shocked that she quickly took a step back. What are you doing?" "I'm showing you. What's the point of looking at my back?" Long Jie held onto her wildly beating heart. She suddenly felt a little flustered. Especially as she looked at Lu Che's bright eyes, she didn't know what to do. She wasn't sure if Lu Che was doing this on purpose, or if he really thought she should see his back. "Don't tease me like this," Long Jie roared in her heart. She really wanted to pounce on him. Lu Che stared at Long Jie for a while. After deciding she had seen enough, he stood up and said, "Sit in front of me. Knowing someone is looking at me from behind makes me feel a little creeped out." Long Jie. Most importantly, shouldn't this idiot be concerned about why she was sneaking glances at him? A negative EQ was really hopeless. Long Jie was a little angry. She grabbed the contract and sat down where Lu Che was sitting. She lowered her head and immersed herself in her own world. She no longer wanted to be the one sneaking glances. Being with someone like Lu Che was going to anger her to death sooner or later. Lu Che bit his pin as he looked at Long Jie's back. The corners of his lips naturally curved upwards. "Am I allowed to look at you? I also want to look at you." 2 days later, Tongning finished all her work at JK and threw herself into international magazine cover shoots. One schedule followed the next. Sometimes, she even had to attend a few shows in one day. However, as she shone at the London Fashion Week, people from all over the world began to pay attention to this charming oriental face. At the end of the day, Emoting had to return to Beijing. Tongning returned to the manor after nightfall. By this time, Emoting had already packed his luggage and was leaning against the car door waiting for her. Because he had rested for a few days, Emoting's spirit had recovered and the fatigue on his handsome face was gone. Tongning was extremely satisfied, so she hugged and kissed Emoting in front of the car. "When I return home, I will be able to fight side by side with you," Tongning promised as she lay on Emoting's chest. "I will definitely do what I promised you." Emoting stretched out his hand and stroked his wife's soft hair. He then placed a kiss on the top of her head. "I've already left a bodyguard for you. No matter what happens, give me a call as soon as possible." "I know." Tongning nodded in seriousness. "Let's go home early. If you are at home, where can I escape to?" After speaking, Tongning stood on her tiptoes and placed a kiss on Emoting's lips. Emoting hooked his arm around Tongning's neck and took the opportunity to deepen the kiss until the couple couldn't breathe. However, they did not notice that behind the high walls, there was a reporter hanging from a tree and secretly taking pictures of the manor. Because it was night time and he was quite a distance away, he couldn't get a picture of the man leaning against the car. But their kiss was so obvious that no matter how blurry it was, it couldn't escape the camera. Although the reporter from Huarong Studio was disappointed that he couldn't get a picture of the man's face, At least he managed to get a picture of Tongning and the man being intimate. The reporter scoffed. He finally lived up to his expectations. After experiencing so much pain, he finally got what he wanted. Tongning, just you wait to explain everything to everyone. After sending emoting off, Tongning once again returned to the manor. She stared quietly at the sofa the couple were lying on and suddenly felt a sense of loneliness. Just a second ago, the man had just left, but now, her heart was starting to miss him. But Tongning understood, in order to become a supermodel, she needed to produce enough results on the international runway. This was something she couldn't achieve no matter how hard she struggled on the Beijing runway. Of course, apart from her, Long Jia was also feeling depressed. Although she had to put up with the idiot's low EQ after spending so much time with Lu Che, at least she was able to see him. Now that he was gone, no matter how busy she was at night, there wouldn't be anyone to complain about being tired with her. Okay, tomorrow you will have a new job to do. When we get busy, you won't have time to think too much. Long Jia knew Tongning missed emoting, so she patted her on the shoulder comfortingly. Tongning was silent for a moment before she suddenly turned around and said to Long Jia, "You too?" Long Jia's face turned red. She stuttered, "You? What are you talking about?" Did she really need to expose her thoughts? Tongning smiled. In just a short span of 2 days, Chungtian Entertainment's news had been pushed out of the search rankings by New News. Even the recording that was hanging on the headlines could no longer attract the attention of the netizens. Over the past few days, Lan Shi had been busy running around trying to talk to old friends. Chungtian's situation had improved slightly, but the main reason was because Tongning was still there. Only Luo Hao's whereabouts were a little strange. He had placed all his attention on Han Xiner's incident, especially on the friend that had helped her fight for justice. However, the words that came out of his mouth could never be true, especially when it came to Tongning. He simply continued to deepen the misunderstanding the girl had towards Tongning. For example, at this moment, he directly went to the girl's house with money and told her, "Tongning is a model. It's normal for her to take care of her body. So, she hopes Shiner can understand." But she obviously promised Shiner that she would save her. The girl was a little angry from Luo Hao's nagging. Yuan, you need to understand. Tongning is a model. She can't possibly give up on her work. This is a breach of contract. I don't know what breach of contract is. All I know is, Tongning is not trustworthy. The girl called Yuan said angrily. She has not kept her promise to Shiner. How dare she be the #1 model? She is not worthy. Also, take your money back. If you want money, I have plenty of it. Chapter 202. In front of Yuan, Luo Hao appeared helpless and anxious. It was as if he wanted to help, but was powerless to do so. After leaving Yuan's home, he lowered his head and sneered. In this world, there was going to be another person that hated Tongning. In the end, Yuan angrily visited Han Shiner at the hospital. At this time, Han Shiner, who was suffering from her illness, was watching a collection of Tongning's runway shows. Yuan stretched out her head and took a quick glance before snatching the video out of Han Shiner's hands. "Do you still think she's good? This woman never wanted to save you." Han Shiner noticed Yuan's mood wasn't right, so she sat up and asked, "What's wrong with you recently? Why are you always saying bad things about Tongning?" "I wanted Tongning's agency, but the people from Chungtian actually tried to bribe me with money. They said Tongning doesn't remember agreeing to donate a kidney to you. They also said that as a model, her body is important. What they mean is, she doesn't want to donate." As soon as Han Shiner heard this, her eyelashes gently trembled as she grabbed onto Yuan's arm. "Why did you go to Chungtian? Chungtian can't wait to trample Tongning to death. Don't you know you could be used by others?" Yuan froze for a moment before looking at Han Shiner. "Are you serious? I told you to pay more attention to the entertainment news." Han Shiner glared at her as her emotions gradually calmed down. She then asked, "You said Tongning doesn't remember agreeing to donate a kidney to me. Did you hear it with your own ears? Since you didn't speak to Tongning directly, why would you believe the words of a middleman?" Yuan was speechless, unable to refute. "By the way, Yuan, I've told you many times, Tongning has no relationship with me. Whether it's in terms of responsibility or morality, she has no reason to save me. You are a highly educated person. Don't tell me you don't understand this? After Han Shiner finished speaking, she noticed Yuan Yuan did not respond. So, she propped up her weak body and asked, "The day Chengtun sees you again, you must tell me. I will definitely let you see their true colors." Yuan Yuan thought for a moment and decided she should trust her friend more. So, she nodded her head. "I simply don't want anything to happen to you. I will be fine." After working in London for half a month, Tongning's sleep had decreased to 4 hours a day. But, because of her hard work over the past half a month, Tongning had secured a number of global endorsements for luxury brands, as well as attending important shows for world-renowned brands. Tongning was right. Previously, when Zaheo left, she did not cancel her contract with Changtian. As a result, she couldn't even take care of herself and couldn't do anything to help her. Currently, Tongning was going to hand the important contracts to Imo Ting to review. As for the rest, she and Long Jie would discuss it together. As for the interviews and remuneration, they would negotiate on their own. Because Tongning wanted opportunities, she wasn't unreasonable and her demands were reasonable. This satisfied many of her business partners. As Tongning had been overseas for a long period of time, news about her within the country had decreased. She no longer needed to use her popularity to fight for fashion resources. After JK, she had already gotten past the awkward stage. However, she had no idea, beneath the seemingly calm surface of Beijing, there was actually a turbulent undercurrent. Luo Hao and Chang Tian had not been completely resolved. During this time, Shi had used her connections to poach a few newcomers with potential from other agencies. However, even though Shi did not ask about Tongning's matters, she had been keeping an eye on her. Seeing Tongning's achievements on the international runway, she no longer contacted Luo Hao. It seemed she was ready to admit defeat. What else could she do to stop her? Every day, Long Jie would sit in the study room and draw a red cross on the calendar. She would calculate how many days it would be before she returned to China and how long it would be before she could see Lu Che again. Tongning even noticed Long Jie had lost weight during this time. She wasn't sure if it was due to the torture of work or because she missed Lu Che. Tongning returned to her bedroom and lay in bed talking to Imo Ting on the phone. No matter how late it was, Tongning needed to hear Imo Ting's voice before she could fall asleep. So, Imo Ting now had a new job to do. Sometimes, Tongning would fall asleep with her phone in her hand, but Imo Ting would not hang up on her. He would leave the phone on until she woke up the next day, and Imo Ting would continue to say good morning to her. Lu Che had seen this scene many times. He once thought to himself, although his president wasn't in the UK, his daily routine was in sync with the British. "Ting, how many days until I return?" "4 days. Imo Ting replied gently over the phone. "Uh-huh, 4 days. I'll get through it if I grit my teeth," Tongning replied as she washed her face. "I really missed you too much. If it took any longer, I wouldn't be able to hold on any longer. I just returned from the UK 2 days ago." Imo Ting's voice was a little helpless but doting. "So, you don't miss me anymore?" "When I left 2 days ago, I clearly expressed how much I missed you." After hearing this, Tongning's face turned red. "Wait for me. I'll be back soon." Wait for me? Everything she did was for the sake of being as glorious as the sun. Imo Ting looked at the wedding ring on his finger and seemed to have come to a realization. "We still need to love each other for the rest of our lives. I'll wait for you." Tongning smiled in satisfaction. It seemed, as long as Imo Ting was guiding her, no matter how tired she was, she would still be able to move forward. Half a month after Han Shiner requested to see Luo Hao finally came to see Yuan Yuan again. Yuan Yuan immediately gave her driver a phone call and instructed him to pick Shiner up from the hospital without anyone noticing. Luo Hao had no idea. Every time he came, he would come with an apologetic message and a message that Tongning wanted to pass to Han Shiner. "Tongning will be returning to the UK in a few days. She asked me to ask you not to use Shiner's incident to create hype. It hasn't been easy for her to get to where she is today. She doesn't want anything to affect her status." Yuan Yuan looked at Luo Hao. With Han Shiner's warning, she had become a little smarter, so she deliberately said, I've long since given up hope that she'll keep her promise. Status? Is she even worthy of being a model? If anything happens to Sheener, I will make sure she regrets it for the rest of her life. Yuan, don't be so extreme. Tongning has no choice. Oomph. Yuan scoffed. Tongning also said that you can name any condition you want. Mr. Luo, please be honest with me. What were Tongning's exact words? Yuan deliberately tried to get information out of Luo Hao. Seeing Yuan was angry, Luo Hao held it in for a moment before replying. Han Sheener? What has she got to do with me? Isn't her death a good thing? Shouldn't the entire Han family die? How could she expect me to save her? I am a famous model. Why would I give up a kidney for someone I have nothing to do with? Dream on. Did she really say that? Yuan's face turned red. Aha. Luo Hao nodded his head as he looked at Yuan and said firmly, those are Tongning's exact words. At this time, the door to the Yuan family home's dining room suddenly opened. Han Sheener snuck in through the side door and approached Luo Hao and Yuan with the help of the housekeeper. She looked at Luo Hao with a pale face and asked, did Tongning say this? Are you sure? Chapter 203. Luo Hao glanced at Yuan and then at Han Sheener. All of a sudden, he lost his confidence. He had never met Han Sheener before. All he knew was that she had been sick for a long time, but he didn't know much else about her. He originally thought there was no need to waste so much energy on someone that was about to die. So, at this moment, he couldn't figure out why Han Sheener's eyes were filled with anger. Was it because he had made up the things Tongning said? Regardless, he was already in a difficult position. All he could do was maintain his calm and nod his head. Of course, Tongning said it. I am her director. Why would I slander her? Han Sheener looked at Luo Hao from top to bottom. She then smiled and squeezed out 2 words from her chest. You're lying? Mr. Luo, don't think that just because Yuan is simple, you can fool everyone. Chung Tian Entertainment has been suppressing Tongning step by step. Did you think everyone is blind just because Yuan doesn't like to go online? The recording of Chung Tian slandering Tongning has been on the top searches for so long. Do you think everyone is stupid? Luo Hao was suddenly left speechless by Han Sheener's words. He had no way to refute her. He had never expected Han Sheener to get involved. Plus, how long have I known Tongning? Whether she would say something like that or not, shouldn't I know? Do I need you to find out? In reality, you haven't even spoken to Tongning on the phone, have you? Han Sheener's body was weak. Because she had been suffering from her illness for years, her body was in a bad state. But she was a girl in her early 20s. Even though she was sick, she still used her firm stand to defend the person she believed in and admired. Mr. Luo, go back and tell your CEO, Lan Shi, not to try and use me to attack Tongning. I will not let her succeed. Also, please stay away from my friend. She is a simple girl. She can't afford to be hurt by scheming people like you. Please go ahead. In the end, Han Sheener said, go ahead. She didn't even give Luo Hao a chance to speak. She had clearly expressed her stance. She did want to live a healthy life, but it was never at the cost of harming others and harming others. Actually, before Tongning broke up with her brother, she had already sensed something was wrong with her brother. At that time, she really wanted to remind Tongning not to be so stupid. Luckily, Tongning woke up on her own and stood up again. The reborn Tongning gave her the courage to continue living. She had been trying to absorb strength from Tongning. In fact, she even tried to emulate her idol's style of doing things. So, she watched all of Tongning's runway shows and magazine covers. In her heart, there was no one more important than Tongning. Because of this person's faith, she had the courage to overcome difficult times. Luo Hao didn't say anything because he felt a burning pain on his cheek, and it was a hard slap from a little girl in her early 20s. As a result, he left the Yuan family's villa in a straight line. No one knew what he was thinking as he left. As soon as Luo Hao left, Han Sheener couldn't help but take a few steps back. Yuan immediately reached out her hand to hold her. Don't be so agitated. If I wasn't excited, you wouldn't even know that you were sold by him. Han Sheener pushed Yuan on the head. Idiot. From now on, Can you stop thinking with your butt? If I really wasn't around, what would you do? Yuan Yuan. Yuan Yuan choked up as she hugged onto her best friend, unwilling to let go. But Han Shiner was also exhausted, so she fainted in Yuan Yuan's arms. Yuan Yuan was so shocked that she immediately rushed her back to the hospital. This wasn't something that money could solve. Did she really have to break the law and buy someone else's health? If Tongning didn't become the donor, then who else could save Shiner? Not a single member of the Han family could be relied on. Above all, Han Shiner was admitted to the ICU. Even Yuan Yuan had to stay within the designated time to visit her. However, the first thing that Han Shiner said after waking up was that she was worried Tongning would be caught red-handed by Cheng Tian because of the promise she had made. If she died, then she died. This was fate, and no one could change it. But Tongning still had a long road ahead of her. So, when Yuan Yuan came to visit, Han Shiner simply said, "Yuan Yuan, can you help me look for my brother? I want to see him." "Isn't your brother parking the car for the hotel?" "I want to see him." She wanted Han Yufan to promise her that if one day Tongning was implicated because of this incident, he would step out to clear her name. Meanwhile, when Han Yufan saw his sister, apart from feeling heartache, he also smiled bitterly. "You don't need to worry too much about Tongning, because her husband is the CEO of Hai Rui." Han Shiner was stunned for a moment and did not say a word. But this did not affect her respect for Tongning, because Tongning was still the same Tongning. Do you regret it? Tongning was once so loyal to you, yet you insisted on having an affair with Imo Euro. Han Yufan's arrogance had long been worn away. Right now, he didn't want to think about anything else. All he wanted to do was earn some money and start afresh. After Han Yufan and Yuan Yuan left, Han Shiner lay in bed to get some rest. However, she kept hearing the sound of a camera shutter. So, she pretended to be asleep the entire time. As she felt the footsteps approach her, Han Shiner slightly opened her eyes. She discovered the medical staff had not only taken a photo of her, he had also taken a photo of her medical records on the bedside table. Han Shiner had a feeling Luo Hao was going to use this incident to suppress Tongning, or even he wanted to destroy her completely. Han Shiner wondered if she could get in touch with Tongning. If she couldn't, then who could she look for? That evening, as the sky turned blood red, Cheng Tian Entertainment hung up Tongning's poster in the most eye-catching spot in the building. Lan Shi had already thought it through. At a time when Cheng Tian Entertainment was suffering, there was no need to go against money and benefits. After Luo Hao entered Cheng Tian, he simply glanced at it briefly before heading back to his office. However, Lan Shi called out to him, "Tongning will be returning in a few days. Let's hold a celebratory dinner for her." "She's returning soon?" Luo Hao thought for a moment. It seemed it was time to send Han Shiner on her way early. Once an artist's life was involved, there was no other way out. All they could do was fall from the highest point and be smashed to pieces. Han Shiner also felt the same way. She was like a bomb, but who could she look for help? Imo Ting? Could she? Chapter 204. But she was just a normal university student. What method could she use to see Imo Ting? Yuan Yuan understood Han Shiner's anxiety. Although she thought Han Shiner was a little silly, she was still her best friend. So, while visiting Han Shiner, Yuan Yuan said, "I don't have any friends in the entertainment industry, but I can use my family background to help you." "But, Shiner, I've already looked into the CEO of Hai Rui. He is a legend in the entertainment industry. Will he be willing to see you?" Han Shiner lowered her head in disappointment. Yuan Yuan smiled and comforted. Since he and Tongning are husband and wife, he might be willing. Even though, I think a man like him wouldn't care about a small fry like us. Han Shiner knew Yuan Yuan wasn't having it easy, so her hope was reignited. "Just do your best." But Tongning is already married to the big boss of the entertainment industry. Why hasn't she announced their relationship? Why is she holding on so bitterly? I don't think Cheng Tian knows about this. Han Shiner thought about it for a moment and felt this was exactly how Tongning did things. So, she reminded Yuan Yuan, "Don't tell anyone about this. Tongning must have her own plans." "I can't guarantee anything else," but I can promise you this. Although her feelings towards Tongning were complicated, compared to Chung Tian, she was more willing to trust Tongning. Since Chung Tian had been plotting against Tongning all this time, when Tongning finally revealed her trump card, she was sure to scare a lot of people silly. However, Han Xiner's condition continued to worsen, so Yuan Yuan quickly went to beg her rich father. Although it didn't seem to work, at least it was enough for him to say something. After Han Xiner found out, she specifically asked Yuan Yuan to add a few words for her father's secretary to pass on to Imo Ting. This matter concerns Chung Tian. Please make sure he shows up. With this, Imo Ting would understand, right? Imo Ting's time was not easy to schedule, especially when the Yuan family was using the excuse of investing in film and television. Imo Ting straightforwardly replied, "Reject." That night, Father Yuan and his daughter sat in a private room of a 5-star hotel with Han Xiner, who was barely able to leave the hospital, waiting for Imo Ting. However, after 3 hours, Imo Ting was still nowhere to be seen. From what I see, this Imo Ting doesn't treat Tongning well. We've already made things so clear, yet he still hasn't shown himself, Yuan Yuan said in a dejected tone. Because of this, her impression of Tongning marrying Imo Ting increased. Han Xiner shook her head in disagreement. She simply said apologetically to Father Yuan, "I'm sorry, Uncle Yuan, for making you wait for so long. It's all right, Xiner. Uncle's body can't take it anymore. I'll go back now. You guys continue to wait." Yuan Yuan sent her father off and returned to her seat. She looked at the dishes on the table and felt dizzy. "I'm so hungry." Another 2 hours passed and it was already midnight. Yuan Yuan had completely lost her patience as she slammed her hands on the table and stood up. "This Imo Ting is too much. Even if we are insignificant people, he shouldn't humiliate us like this. Plus, we are only helping his wife. He doesn't care about Tongning at all." As his words fell, a tall figure appeared behind her. Of course, that was Lu Che. Afterwards, Imo Ting entered the private room. Yuan Yuan did not expect to see the person in person. She was a little surprised as she sat down awkwardly. In reality, Han Xiner was also quite surprised. She had already decided that Imo Ting would never show up. Who would have thought? He actually showed up. Imo Ting also did not expect to see two young ladies. So, to avoid any misunderstandings, he asked Lu Che to sit down with them. Han Xiner had no time to waste, so she directly said to Imo Ting, "President Imo, I asked you to come because of Tongning." As soon as Imo Ting heard the name Tongning, he furrowed his brows. From this simple action, Yuan Yuan could feel the dangerous aura emanating from his body. Did he need to be so scary? So, Han Xiner spent some time explaining her identity, as well as her encounter with Luo Hao and how he found out Tongning had agreed to donate a kidney to Imo Ting. Actually, even after the entire story was told, Han Xiner still felt like it wasn't real. She never expected Imo Ting to be sitting in front of her. "Tongning will never donate a kidney to you," Imo Ting said straightforwardly as he adjusted his jacket. Imo Ting straightened the front of his coat and straightforwardly told Han Xiner, as her husband, not to mention removing her kidney, even if she were to go for a blood test or an injection, my heart would ache for half a day. After hearing this, Han Xiner nodded her head calmly. I never had such extravagant hopes. However, Yuan Yuan was a little angry. Just as she was about to say what was so great about it, Imo Ting's next sentence made her swallow the words she was about to say. "But, I can help you find a kidney anywhere in the world." I know, the Han family owes Tongning too much. I really didn't come here for a kidney. I simply don't want Ning Jie to be hurt again. Even if Tongning was here today, she would still do the same thing. Your brother has wronged her, but that is your brother's fault. It has nothing to do with you. She has always been clear about her debts. But, do you think I can't represent her? After asking this question, Imo Ting stood up and instructed Lu Che, escort them home. Afterwards, go to Han Xiner's hospital and get a copy of the relevant doctor's information. Also, arrest any hospital staff that takes photos of Han Xiner or acts strangely. If you allow Luo Hao to find an opportunity to make a move, then I will no longer need you by my side. After hearing Imo Ting's instructions, Lu Che immediately nodded his head. Don't worry, President. Han Shiner and Yuan Yuan looked at the tall and sturdy Emoting. They finally understood the rumors that had been circulating around them. How he was decisive and serious. Yes, these weren't rumors, they were the truth. In fact, Yuan Yuan didn't even dare to look at Emoting. As she left the hotel, she looked more like a patient than Han Shiner. Shiner, my legs are weak. Will Tongning really be happy marrying such a cold man? Han Shiner smiled as dimples appeared on her cheeks. But I can tell that he loves Tongning. Otherwise, do you think he would be willing to marry an insignificant person like us? Plus, didn't you hear what he said? At least, he's much better than my second brother. Regardless, Yuan Yuan, thank you for today. With someone protecting Tongning, I can rest assured. Hey, do you think that Luo Hao will die a horrible death? That's Emoting. Emoting. As Lu Che drove, he overheard the two friends discussing Emoting and the relationship between Tongning and Emoting. Lu Che thought to himself, they were doing well. However, they didn't need to prove anything to the public. As for Luo Hao, Lu Che wasn't confident. It all depended on his CEO's mood. Of course, in a situation like this, no one would be in a good mood. Chapter 205. In reality, even Luo Hao wasn't sure how far he should go with Han Shiner. In reality, he could use Han Shiner's incident to create hype. But, according to Tongning's current status, news like this would be drowned in a sea of news and wouldn't have any negative impact on Tongning. Sometimes, Luo Hao even thought of letting go, just like Lan Shi. But, things had already gotten to this point. Not only did he have to bear the hatred of Yang Jing and Lan Shi, he also had to stop Tongning from the beginning. The main reason he couldn't stop was because he knew Tongning was a vengeful person, especially now that Tongning's status in Chengtian was like the sun in the sky. Did he, Hua Yuan, and even Lan Shi have to listen to a model? In the end, Luo Hao made his decision. In this realistic agency and this cruel industry, when there was an opportunity to step on others, there was no use in using underhanded methods. So, although dealing with Han Shiner was risky, if it was played well, it would yield miraculous results. He would be able to destroy Tongning in one fell swoop. Perhaps it was because Han Shiner had been out for too long and caught a cold, but as soon as she returned to the hospital, she started running a high fever. As a result, she was immediately sent to the emergency room for emergency treatment. Yuan Yuan was filled with regret. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have agreed to let Shiner take her out of the hospital. Now, her life was in danger. Most importantly, during Shiner's critical moment, the emergency room doctor discovered one of his nurses had pulled out her phone and taken a photo of the patient. Although she did it discreetly, the doctor notified the head nurse and the nurse was kicked out. As soon as Yuan Yuan heard about the incident, she was furious. Are you even human? The nurse was scolded by the head nurse and Yuan Yuan in turn. She was so humiliated that she began to cry. Although Yuan Yuan wasn't very smart, she definitely had a temper. So, she grabbed onto the nurse and warned, "Who told you to do this?" Lu Che was already in the middle of making arrangements. As soon as he heard about the incident, he immediately rushed over to the emergency room and said to Yuan Yuan, "Leave this matter to me. Don't let this jerk off so easily." Lu Che nodded his head and brought the jerk to the department head's office. He also took the nurse's phone records with Luo Hao and the photos she took as evidence. This included the nurse's verbal evidence and the bank account number she gave him. Afterwards, Lu Che instructed the man, "Send these photos to him as usual, and don't let him know that we already have evidence. Keep it a secret, otherwise, I will call the police." The man waved his trembling hands. "No, I'll do whatever you say as long as you don't call the police." Lu Che put away the evidence. If Luo Hao hadn't been so impatient this time, he wouldn't have been able to catch him in a short time. However, Han Shiner's condition did not improve. Even after emergency resuscitation, her vital signs did not stabilize. Shiner is so pitiful. If she doesn't wake up within 12 hours, we'll have to go through a second surgery. Lu Che looked at Yuan Yuan and realized that this pair of friends had a very deep relationship, so he comforted her. "It will get better." The doctor said that the success rate of Shiner's surgery tomorrow will be even lower than today. However, Han Shiner didn't last for more than 12 hours before she was once again sent into surgery. This time, the doctors all expressed that there was no hope. The doctor walked out of the surgery room and told the family to prepare for her funeral. But Lu Che made a prompt decision and immediately transferred Han Shiner to the best hospital in Beijing for treatment. But because the doctor told the family to prepare for her funeral, Luo Hao took advantage of it and exposed Han Shiner's condition while no one was paying attention. This was a godsend opportunity. He even prepared an angry post from the perspective of Han Shiner's friend, accusing Tongning of not being human and not being trustworthy. She had once promised to save Han Shiner's life, yet she went back on her word, causing the patient to miss out on finding a kidney. In the end, she almost died. No one noticed the word almost. All they saw was her death. Tongning indirectly killed someone. She killed someone. She killed someone. As long as a post like this was released, regardless of whether Han Shiner ended up dead or alive, the public's attention would be drawn to the word murder. In simpler terms, it would be, Tongning killed someone. When the news was released, Han Shiner had just been rescued. But Yuan did not tell her about the news in Beijing because she was afraid she wouldn't be able to handle the shock. However, Yuan never expected Luo Hao to be so despicable and shameless. He actually took advantage of a loophole like this. She almost became his chess piece and became the person to accuse Tongning. What should we do now? Yuan asked Lu Che anxiously. Will we really implicate Tongning? Lu Che smiled in relief and said confidently, the media loves to follow the trend these days. Don't forget, everyone is talking about Tongning killing someone, yet Han Shiner is still alive and well. How could she be accused of killing someone? I never expected Luo Hao to be in such a rush. But these people are scolding her so harshly. Let them scold her. Our madam has already been scolded so many times. Why would she care about this one more time? But this time it's different. They are accusing her of murder. The reason why Luo Hao dared to release this information was firstly because Tongning had promised to donate her kidney to Han Shiner. Secondly, even if Han Shiner didn't die, she was still on the brink of death and Tongning didn't save her. So, in the eyes of keyboard warriors, killing someone was no different. Because she didn't save someone. This time, no matter how Tongning tries to turn things around, I will never trust her again. She's too meddlesome. Don't tell me there's nothing wrong with her. If you can't save someone, then don't boast. If you boast, then don't run away from responsibility. Doesn't Tongning like to create hype? She's too scheming. I'm a fan. But if Tongning is really as the post says, I will definitely hate her for life. Hurry and ban her. Just looking at her makes me tired. I'm really tired of looking at her. But when you think about it, these people might have been shouting, I love you, just yesterday. But sometimes the human heart could be this cold. Online, discussions and alliances to boycott Tongning began to appear. They claimed that they wouldn't buy Tongning's endorsements and wouldn't even read Tongning's magazines. Out of all the confrontations that Luo Hao had, this was probably the most satisfying one. The negative impact it had on Tongning was unprecedented. But it did not affect Tongning's work in England in the slightest. After all, Westerners would only ask one question: why should I save her? After Tongning finished work, she saw the news that broke out. She had already spoken to Immerse and was mentally prepared. This time, she was being used because she had indeed said something. Even if she could lie to others, she couldn't lie to herself. As for the reason why Immerse didn't stop the situation from escalating, it was because he wanted to teach Luo Hao and the keyboard warriors a lesson. Above all, he wanted to create an excuse and opportunity for her to leave Chengtian. Before hanging up the phone, Immerse gave her a message. You only have one choice now. Come to Hai Rue. Chapter 206. This time, Immerse did not give her any other options. He did not mention Star King again. He simply said, you only have one choice. Come to Hai Rue. It seemed there was no such thing as absolute fairness in this world, but there was absolute power. Hai Rue belonged to Immerse. As for Hai Rue, if there was any shady dealings or unwritten rules, Ting would not give anyone a chance. Even if the person was a superstar, they would still meet their downfall. This time, although Tongning did not nod in agreement, she did not reject him either. As she hung up the phone, a slight smile appeared on her face. Because at Hyrule, she no longer felt afraid or inferior. This time, the explosive news spread like wildfire without giving Tongning any time to catch her breath. Resistance towards her reached all levels. Even when she had just appeared on her Vision magazine, she had never received such a cold reception. Obviously, because of human lives, even Tongning's professional attitude could not save her from the criticism from her anti-fans. Luo Hao had already seen through her PR methods. But, this time, the hatred and resistance that Tongning aroused was felt by the entire nation. It was the result of the anti-fans working together. Even if someone appeared online to speak up for Tongning, they would be quickly destroyed by the anti-fans. So, after the Han Shiner incident, no one stood out to speak up for Tongning. Even her former business partners, even TQ's Lin Weisin, chose to keep their mouths shut when faced with the media. It wasn't that they didn't trust Tongning, but no matter what they said, to them, it would be an excuse. For Tongning, it would only make things worse. Of course, Changtian Entertainment did not do anything about the incident. As soon as the incident began, Lan Shi approached Luo Hao. Although she hated Tongning, Tongning's rising status overseas brought about significant benefits for Changtian. After experiencing Nziheo's exposure, Changtian's reputation was slowly recovering. But Luo Hao had gone too far this time. In fact, he had even gambled Changtian's future. So, Lan Shi was extremely unhappy. Did you know that we are now in a relationship where we are bound together for good or bad? By exposing Tongning like this, aren't you afraid that Changtian Entertainment will also lose out? Lan Shi threw all the newspapers in her hands at Luo Hao's face. Did you know that after Tongning's scandal broke out, our company's share price dropped to the freezing point? When Luo Hao heard this, he could not say that there was no hesitation in his eyes, but he still moved his Adam's apple and said, I know what I'm doing. You know your limits. Lan Shi sneered. You have no confidence in yourself. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're a god? You can control the thoughts of a few people, but can you control the entire network? Actually, I've always known that out of the three of them, you are the most patient, because you think you can do great things. I also have to admit that sometimes your company makes me feel at ease, but when you stab someone with a knife, you also raise your hand and the knife falls down, sealing the throat with the touch of blood. Lan Shi finally understood what it meant to reap what you sow, why did she fail so badly, and why her career was constantly ruined by her own people. I told you, I know what I'm doing. Just leave it to me. Lan Shi did not say another word as she looked at Luo Hao mockingly. The two women's eyes met. In the end, Lan Shi admitted defeat. Things had already gotten to this point. Was there any room to turn back? However, after all the time she had tried to frame Tongning, this was the first time she felt a little guilty. Murder. When a label like this was placed on someone, what would be destroyed? No one could control it. I heard that Han Shiner's friend contacted Tongning a few times, but Tongning told her to die. Didn't she find the friend that hit Han Shiner and threaten her not to make a sound? Haven't you guys seen the latest news? Apparently, Tongning has a grudge against the Han family, so she deliberately prevented Han Shiner from finding another kidney. Tongning, go die. Exactly. Tongning deserves to die. Tongning, why aren't you dead yet? This was an overwhelming amount of scandals, as well as extremely filthy insults. The netizens spread the rumor that Tongning had broken her promise, almost causing Han Shiner's death, and that Tongning had wanted to kill Han Shiner. Even funnier was the fact that a loyal fan of hers had posted Tongning's upcoming return schedule online. They even included an arrogant comment, "Slut, return to your country immediately and prepare to be attacked." In reality, at 10 p.m. in the UK, 8 a.m. in Beijing, Tongning's flight had already landed at the airport a day early. Ting immediately sent someone to pick Tongning up from the tarmac and returned to Hyatt Regency without alerting the media. As soon as she stepped through the front door, Ting was waiting at the door dressed in casual clothes. As soon as he saw her, he immediately opened his arms wide. Without hesitation, Tongning pounced over and buried herself in Ting's chest. Both of them let out a satisfied sigh. Some people said, a woman was a man's second rib, and a hug was to let the rib return to its original position. I agree. Tongning hugged Ting's waist tightly as she said these two words out of the blue. I promise. Ting froze for a moment before he realized what she had promised. I didn't reply to you over the phone because I wanted you to see my expression and understand that I wasn't joking, Tongning said in seriousness as she lifted her head from Ting's embrace. Ting's heart ached as he gently patted Tongning on the head and nodded his head. My empire will provide you with the strongest protection. I know, Tongning nodded. I will give you the fairest treatment. I know, Tongning replied. I'm just worried that the other people at Hyrule will think it's unfair. You've already shown brightly on JK and secured a number of endorsements for luxury brands. Who would dare to say anything? I'm just worried that you will protect me and be unfair to others. Tongning suddenly laughed. Would you do that? The agency will formulate a reasonable plan based on each artist's development. Everyone has their own goals and prospects. In other words, Hyrue's arrangements for each artist were tailored to their current development. Hyrule paid attention to the psychological changes of their artists. As soon as they felt uncomfortable, their manager would immediately adjust until they understood where they stood. So, they treated themselves as opponents and treated their opponents as goals. In that case, who are you going to hire as my manager? Chapter 207. Who do you want to be your manager? Ting asked instead of answering. Tongning shook her head. She had a deep sense of trust towards Hyrule. Plus, with her current status, although it wasn't that she didn't have the qualifications to enter Hyrule, she definitely wasn't a big deal. Ting smiled mysteriously without giving an answer. He simply led Tongning back to the bedroom and helped her lie down on the bed. Don't think about anything right now. Get used to the jet lag and wait for me to get home from work. Since you were scheduled to return tomorrow, today, you can take some time off. Tongning lay on the bed and held onto Ting's hand. I'm fine, don't worry. After experiencing so much, as long as she continued to move forward, she wouldn't feel despair. I'll get Lu Che to arrange for Longjia to send Chung Tian a contract termination letter. Okay. Tongning gently nodded her head. However, as Ting turned to leave, she reached out her hand and held on to him. I want to see Xing Er. I know you're worried, so I've already made arrangements for you. After you've had enough sleep, Lu Che will take you there. After speaking, Ting leaned over and placed a gentle kiss on Tongning's forehead. Feeling at ease, Tongning slowly closed her eyes. Her eyelashes gently trembled a few times, and soon, she fell into a deep sleep. Although she was exhausted, Tongning was well aware that the pressure of work was greater than the scandal that broke out in Changtian. She no longer felt sorry for herself and was no longer sad over the comments. She was reminded of something a famous person once said. When netizens don't even have the courage to use their real names, they simply judge and humiliate you. In reality, what they say has no value. You don't need to be angry or sad over their irresponsible actions. At times like this, all you need to do is rest up and use the most appropriate method to strike back. Ting only left home after making sure Tongning had fallen asleep. However, on the way to Hyrule, Lu Che couldn't help but ask, regarding the Madam's incident, are we going to follow the usual procedures? Ting looked down at the documents in his hands. His voice was deep and alluring. This time, the order is like this. Contact the law firm and send Chung Tian a contract termination letter on Tongning's behalf. After Chung Tian announces the termination, get the artist director to announce that Tongning has officially joined Hyrule. Announce it first? Why don't you solve the problem first? The announcement is part of the solution. Afterwards, Hyrule will hold a press conference to clarify the Han Shiner incident. Most importantly, we need to find 10 unusually active anti-fans and extract information from them to use at the press conference. I want them to know that if they speak carelessly, they will have to pay a price that they will never be able to imagine in their lifetime. After hearing this, Lu Che suddenly felt excited. Luo Hao would never understand that all the effort he had put into setting up a trap was simply to help Tong Ning's career take another step forward. Then who is Madame's manager? Me? Mo Ting was silent for a few seconds before suddenly saying this one word. Lu Che was taken aback for a moment. Astonishment filled his face. But, for now, don't announce it to the public and don't tell Tong Ning. Lu Che smiled and nodded. It seemed the only person in the world that could sign with Hai Rui and have Mo Ting as their manager was Tong Ning. He suddenly looked forward to the day the truth would be announced. Did Luo Hao think he would deal a critical blow to Tong Ning? How pitiful. After Han Shiner woke up from her surgery, the first thing she did was ask Tong Ning how she was doing. Yuan glanced at her. She was too afraid to tell Han Shiner about the bloodbath that was taking place outside, so all she could do was beat around the bush. However, Han Shiner wasn't an easy person to fool. All it took was one glance for her to see through Yuan's act. So, she struggled to sit up and asked Yuan for her phone. Shiner, you can't even take care of yourself right now. Can't you get some rest? You said yourself that Tong Ning has someone protecting her. But Yuan couldn't resist Han Shiner's pleading expression, so she handed the phone to her. Han Shiner opened up the webpage and saw the words Tong Ning murder was at the top of the search rankings. She suddenly panicked as she struggled to get up. I'm alive and well. Why are these people talking nonsense? Yuan quickly held her back. She was so angry that she almost laughed. Look at you. Where can you go? Hurry and lie back down. You should be worried about Tong Ning. You will be able to see her soon. As the two were talking, Tong Ning and Han Shiner's doctor entered Han Shiner's hospital room together. The doctor was holding onto a case file as he said to Tong Ning, she is currently in the middle stages of her treatment. Luckily, she still has time and a chance. But she can't catch a cold like she did this time. She can't be stubborn either. President Mo has already arranged for a match, and we are currently searching for resources around the world. I'm sure we will hear back soon. Miss Tang, you don't need to worry. Thank you, doctor. The doctor thanked her politely before leaving the room. At this time, Tong Ning turned around and looked at Han Shiner helplessly. Your brother's mistake shouldn't be shouldered by you. You didn't contact me all this time, so I didn't know your condition had gotten this serious. Han Shiner's heart ached as she turned her face away. I'm fine. You're as stubborn as me. Tong Ning sighed as she walked over to Han Shiner's bed and sat down beside her. Han Shiner looked at Tong Ning's calm expression and asked, don't you mind the rumors that are going around? Chapter 208. The next morning, the entertainment news was broadcasting the scene at Beijing Airport, and the TV station was broadcasting an interview with a reporter. I'm afraid this is not only my first time as a reporter, but also the first time I've seen something like this. Fans gathered together on such a large scale, not because they like someone, but because they hate them. From the scene, we can see that these fans are holding banners and holding up placards. Without exception, they are all expressing their anger towards the model, Tong Ning. After speaking, the reporter looked down at her watch and lifted her head. From what we know, Tong Ning's flight will land at 10 a.m. this morning. She has less than 20 minutes left. The airport is currently undergoing emergency security measures. At this time, we simply hope that Tong Ning can escape safely and not get hurt. After Long Jie finished watching the news, she lifted her hand and turned off the television. She then turned her head to look at Tong Ning. She was standing next to the dining table trimming some flowers. I've already asked my lawyer to send out a contract termination letter. I'm guessing it's already in Lan Shi's hands, Long Jie said as she turned around to look at Tong Ning. Tong Ning did not say a word as she continued to prune the flowers. Tong Ning, do you know how angry I was after reading those comments on Weibo last night? Look at me. My eyes are swollen from crying. Long Jie said as she pointed to her peach-shaped eyes. You deserved it, Tong Ning replied calmly. I'm doing all this for you. You're considered an outstanding outlier. There are so many fans out there to pick up their idols. They're even singing, I only like you to their idols. Look at your fans. They're holding banners telling you to get lost, asking you to apologize, and even asking you to die. I think, after this battle, My name will go down in history. Tongning continued pruning the roses and placing them into a glass vase. However, Tongning could roughly guess what Long Jia was trying to do. She was obviously trying to test her mood. But after experiencing so much, she no longer cared about the hurt from the rumors. In the past, she had to endure it, but now, she no longer cared. Long Jia was satisfied with the results of her test. She had already ridiculed Tongning to this extent, yet Tongning remained calm. So, she slowly let go of the anxiety in her heart. Originally, she wanted to change the topic and talk about something happy. However, at this moment, she received a phone call from Lan Shi. After seeing the number, Long Jia asked if Tongning wanted to pick up. Tongning put down her scissors and grabbed the phone. Have you returned to China? Lan Shi asked. Have you returned? Lan Shi asked. As she had just received Tongning's contract termination letter, Lan Shi guessed that Tongning was already in China. This was in line with her usual style of doing things. She would never give her anti-fans a chance to surround her. I arrived yesterday. Tongning replied calmly without hiding anything. The two of them, who used to be at loggerheads with each other, were able to speak calmly after such an incident. If they hadn't chosen a superior and subordinate relationship from the very beginning, if they had only chosen to be friends, perhaps they would never have reached this step. I've received the contract cancellation letter. Lan Shi looked at the contract cancellation letter again and again. Her emotions were a little complicated. In reality, she didn't know what to say to Tongning. However, as the CEO of the agency, she still had to express the agency's stance. Tongning, do you know how much damage you've caused Cheng Tian? You should ask the person who leaked the information. Tongning hinted at Luo Hao. Cheng Tian also did nothing in this matter and did not fulfill their responsibilities. Therefore, there is no need to argue that there are mistakes between us. I have already signed the contract termination letter. Thank you, Tongning said. Cheng Tian will soon announce that you have been kicked out of the agency. There is nothing I can do about it because I am a businessman. You don't have to find excuses for your shamelessness. You should be happy to see me reach this point. After all, you've won and destroyed the business that I've worked so hard to build. Happy? Lan Shi couldn't feel it at all. Tongning, of course, I have a problem with being competitive. But, with your personality, it's not suitable for you to stay in the entertainment and fashion industry. You get in the way of too many people and make them seem dirty and shameless. So, there are a lot of people that want to drag you down. They want to see this noble model one day fall for unwritten rules, be teased and humiliated. So, you deserve today's outcome. So, you can't wait to imagine me living like a rat on the street, right? Did you think I've been beaten back to my original state and can no longer make a comeback? After asking these two questions, Tongning paused for a moment before letting out a laugh. At least, I'll have to hide and live. That's why I didn't pursue the company for the losses you caused. Consider this my last bit of friendship. Tongning suddenly laughed. In fact, she laughed so hard that her stomach hurt. In that case, I really need to thank you for letting go. Cheng Tian will release a statement this afternoon. When that time came, it would be a devastating blow to Tongning. Feel free to do as you please. Tongning had no intention of lowering her head. In fact, her voice sounded fearless. Lan Shi felt Tongning was holding back her anger. She felt she understood Tongning well enough. Even if she lost everything, she still needed her pride. Afterwards, Lan Shi hung up the phone. She looked at Luo Hao and said with a hint of reluctance, Tongning has terminated her contract. You can handle the rest. After all, it doesn't matter if I'm in this company or not. I never wanted to force you. I simply didn't want you to be soft-hearted. You should be saying these words to yourself. If there's nothing else, then get out, Lan Shi said in disgust as she lowered her head and returned her attention to the documents in front of her. The fate of the company had been placed in the hands of an artist's director. How could she be willing to accept this? Luo Hao knew, this time, he had not only stepped on Lan Shi's bottom line, but also, Lan Shi's already cold heart. Although you may find it disgusting, after so many years in Chengtian, even though I've done a lot of things for myself, I have never thought of betraying Qingtian or you. Lan Shi, can't you tell? I have feelings for you. After hearing this, Lan Shi was amused. It is quite disgusting. You better focus on dealing with Tongning. Otherwise, I won't believe a single word you say. Chapter 209. Inside the crowded airport, the anti-fans waited for 2 hours, but Tongning was nowhere to be seen. Finally, they realized that Tongning had probably returned to China early. So, in the eyes of these people, she gained a new nickname. Cheap model that plays people around. Sometimes, it was hard to understand the dark thoughts of these people. Even if they couldn't afford to offend her, couldn't they just avoid her? Don't tell me that he doesn't know how to dodge when he knows that you're blocking the door. Is he going to fight you head-on like an idiot? But, in the hearts of these people, they took it for granted. If you did something wrong, you should accept our criticism and endure our slaps. If you hid, it meant you had a guilty conscience, you were in the wrong, and you were cheap. No one cared about the so-called truth. Groups of anti-fans couldn't find Tongning, so they surrounded Qingtian Entertainment. However, Qingtian's people also expressed that they had never seen Tongning in person. In the end, Qingtian's people revealed that they would be releasing a short statement in the afternoon and hoped everyone would calm down. If Qingtian continues to shield Tongning, we will boycott you until you close your doors. Although I know the entertainment industry is dirty, I hope you still have a bottom line and tell someone like Tongning to leave. A cheap model that only knows how to hide will forever live in the dark for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, at Hairui Entertainment, CEO's office, Immerse held a short meeting and told everyone that he had already drafted a contract and was ready to sign Tongning to Hairui. The higher-ups looked at each other in confusion. Why would Immerse, who had always been known to boycott bad artists, want to sign Tongning to Hairui? President Immerse, as you've seen, Tongning's incident has caused an uproar. How could someone like her join Hairui? Faced with the employee's question, Immerse glared at him and replied coldly, how did someone like you, who doesn't think before speaking, enter the management level? Is this your first day in the entertainment industry? You should believe whatever the public says. Why don't you go and be an anti-fan instead of being in the management level? Whose subordinate is this? Take him back and write him a 30,000-word reflection letter. Tomorrow morning, I want it on my desk. There will be no next time. The man suddenly fell silent. Of course, he didn't dare to make a sound. As for the rest of the management, because they had been in Hairui for many years and understood Immerse's style of doing things, if Tongning was really the kind of person the rumors made her out to be, there was no way Immerse would consider taking her under his wing. So, they did not have much of an opinion on Immerse's decision. We believe in the president's arrangements. Everyone else also expressed their support. In reality, most of them had seen Tongning's runway shows and had long been impressed by this talented model. They had always wanted to ask Immerse to poach Tongning, but because Tongning had been through so much, they were afraid Immerse would hate her, so they didn't dare to bring it up. Who would have thought, at a time like this, Immerse would offer to sign Tongning? Then it's decided. Fang Yu will stay, everyone else is dismissed. The higher-ups all stood up and left, leaving only the artist director, Fang Yu, in Immerse's office. Immerse handed the information prepared by Lu Che to Fang Yu and handed him full responsibility for the press conference. Fang Yu looked at the contract in his hands and was shocked. President Immerse, your manager. I want to personally take care of Tongning. Is there a problem? Immerse lifted his head and asked. But, don't let anyone know, not even Tongning herself. When the time is right, I will personally tell her. However, Fang Yu couldn't understand why Immerse would give Tongning such special treatment. Immerse seemed to know what Fang Yu was thinking, so he replied firmly, because she is worth it. I understand, President Immerse. Don't worry. After spending some time, Fang Yu understood everything that had happened since Tongning signed with Qingtian. But the thing that surprised him was, how did Immerse find out about all these details? Unless He had been involved from the beginning. Regardless, Chung Tian Entertainment was indeed shameless. Especially when it came to Han Shiner, it was a completely despicable and shameless act. Of course, perhaps it was because he sympathized with Tong Ning's situation. Fang Yu began to look forward to Chung Tian Entertainment's explanation. That way, he could step out and slap them in the face. 3 p.m. After a discussion with the higher-ups of Chung Tian Entertainment, Luo Hao finally decided to step out for an interview at the entrance of Chung Tian Entertainment. Surrounded by the media and anti-fans, Luo Hao first bowed to everyone before turning to the cameras and responding. Firstly, on behalf of Chung Tian Entertainment and our model, Tong Ning, I would like to apologize to the public for the Han Shiner incident. It has been confirmed that our agency's artist, Tong Ning, did indeed have a verbal agreement with Han Shiner. However, as for the rumors online, we have no way of knowing the truth. Due to Tong Ning continuously denying the truth, refusing to cooperate with the investigation and arrogantly sending the agency a contract termination letter, from now on, Tong Ning will be removed from Chung Tian Entertainment. We cannot tolerate an artist with questionable character continuing to tarnish Chung Tian Entertainment's reputation. At this moment, Chung Tian Entertainment would like to appeal to the public. Towards those with bad character, we should unite as one to get rid of them. Tong Ning will be the first and only artist from Chung Tian Entertainment to publicly announce that they will be banned from the entertainment industry. Thank you everyone for your support of Chung Tian Entertainment. We will work hard to improve and I hope everyone will continue to monitor us. Long Jia looked at the news and watched as Luo Hao spat out word after word. She felt like he was slapping Lan Shi in the face. The first person Chung Tian Entertainment wants to ban is Lan Shi. At this time, Lu Che was also at Hyatt Regency. After seeing the news, he joined Long Jia in ridiculing. This level of shamelessness has completely overturned my worldview. Haha, do those two even have worldview? Long Jia rolled her eyes. I really pity our Tong Ning. Pity? Lu Che turned around and glanced at Tong Ning. How is she pitiful for leaving a company like this and joining Hai Rue Entertainment? Luo Hao, that jerk, is still talking. He's still talking. I really want to snap his neck. Why is he so annoying? On the TV, Luo Hao continued to answer the reporter's questions. Do you have any more insider information about Tong Ning? All I can say is, she is different from the person you guys see. People like this, Chung Tian Entertainment will ban every time they see them. Netizens seem to be clapping and cheering at this result. Chung Tian announcing that they were banning Tong Ning was like giving her a death sentence. But, since when did Chung Tian make the decisions in the entertainment industry? To everyone's surprise, after a short 10 minutes of Chung Tian Entertainment's interview, another piece of news completely blew up in the entertainment industry. Chapter 210. Hai Rue Entertainment announces the signing of Tong Ning, officially becoming Tong Ning's new employer. Top entertainment company signing Tong Ning. Cheers for them. Hai Rue beating Chung Tian. What does your ban amount to? Hai Rue signing Tong Ning is a mystery. How much are Chung Tian's words worth? Hai Rue signed Tong Ning? As soon as everyone heard the news, they were dumbfounded. How unbelievable was this? This was Hai Rue they were talking about. Hai Rue, the company with the highest status in the entertainment industry. How could they sign Tong Ning? But, as soon as they saw Hai Rue Entertainment officially announce the signing of Tong Ning, they had no choice but to believe it. In the end, they had no choice but to believe it. It was real. They weren't dreaming. Just 10 minutes ago, Chung Tian had announced their ban on Tong Ning. Yet, 10 minutes later, Tong Ning had signed with Hai Rue and become one of their models. The reporters looked at each other speechlessly, especially when they saw Luo Hao continuously answering questions about Tong Ning and continuously exposing her from the side. He also emphasized that since Tong Ning had already been banned, there was nothing to be afraid of. He was determined to continue down the path of defaming Tong Ning until the end. The reporters suddenly felt very awkward, especially as Luo Hao continued to express his disdain towards Tong Ning. The reporters really wanted to remind him to stop talking because he was being too stupid. If he continued, they would get goosebumps. The scene before them was both funny and ironic. A few of the reporters at the scene even received phone calls from their own companies. At a time like this, it was time to grab the headlines. Who would bother interviewing Cheng Tian? The smarter reporters were already waiting outside Hai Rui's entrance. As for the reporter closest to Luo Hao, he pulled out his phone and showed it to him. Director Luo, is this your so-called ban on Tongning? Luo Hao furrowed his brows in confusion. He then focused his attention on the palm-sized screen and saw a line of words clearly displayed in the middle of the screen. Hai Rui announces signing on Tongning. Cheng Tian Entertainment has been slapped in the face and thrown into an awkward situation. Luo Hao's eyes grew wide in disbelief as he grabbed the phones of others. Without exception, they were all filled with news of Hai Rui signing on Tongning. Just 10 minutes after they announced their contract termination, Hai Rui actually turned Cheng Tian into the laughingstock of the industry in 10 minutes. Luo Hao returned the phone to the reporter. His mind suddenly went blank. Looking at the reporters' faces, it was as if they were all laughing at him with sarcasm, because as soon as he blacklisted Tongning, Hai Rui signed her. Banned? What did you say? Who do you think you are? Does Cheng Tian have a place in the entertainment industry? At this moment, under the siege of the reporters, Luo Hao suddenly panicked. His face turned red, and a sense of shame and anger suddenly drilled into his limbs from the soles of his feet. It's so embarrassing. The reporters at the bottom of the stairs couldn't help but say this because they could feel the humiliation. Afterwards, Lan Shi led the security out the front door and brought the unconscious Luo Hao back to her office. Luo Hao didn't feel anything, but when he was out of the flashing lights outside, he suddenly sat on the ground along the wall, looking depressed and panicked. Lan Shi looked at the man sitting on the floor as her throat burned. Are you satisfied now? Compared to Hai Rui giving me a slap in the face, I feel like I've been stripped naked and humiliated by Hai Rui. Naked. From now on, no matter where I go, I will always be naked. In everyone's eyes, I will be a joke. Not only Lan Shi, everyone in Cheng Tian felt the same way. Hai Rui's slap in the face was too loud. Luo Hao's eyes were empty. He had no idea what Lan Shi had said. It wasn't until the sound of Lan Shi's high heels faded away that he wiped his face and hugged his knees as he sat in a corner. He suddenly didn't know how he was going to face people from now on. Cheng Tian's interview had ended, but Hai Rui's had just begun. Fang Yu wanted to give Cheng Tian a breather. He couldn't let Luo Hao face the second wave of attacks so soon. Standing on the stage, Fang Yu was in a good mood. He wasn't sure if Tongning had seen Luo Hao's face a moment ago, but even through the television screen, he felt embarrassed on behalf of the jerk. Of course, for Hai Rui to announce the signing of Tongning at this critical juncture, they had to bear the burden of Tongning's scandals. Why would Hai Rui sign a model with a murderous reputation? Director Fang, is Hai Rui joking with us? Today is not April Fool's Day. The reporters began to attack Fang Yu. In other words, why would they pick up a piece of trash like Tongning? So, April Fool's Day allows you to play with the media. I'll remember next time. The reason why Fang Yu was able to become the artist director of Hai Rui was because he was extremely good at dealing with reporters. His PR was flawless and his marketing was also on point. Why would Hai Rui sign Tongning at a time like this? Fang Yu glanced at the man. The corners of his mouth curved upwards as he laughed. It seems I've already answered your question. Each reporter only has one chance to ask a question. When we first entered the venue, I already reminded you to take advantage of this opportunity. The reporter's face alternated between green and white. Her first question was whether Hai Rui was joking or not. After learning their lesson, the reporters that followed were a little more cautious towards Fang Yu. Tongning is a murderer. Why would Hai Rui sign her? After hearing these words, Fang Yu glanced at the reporter's work badge and replied coldly, a reporter is a profession that uses a timely, truthful, effective, objective, and fair approach to disseminate information to the public. If you search for this term online, you can find it everywhere. May I ask, what have you done? Another reporter held onto his work badge and turned his face away awkwardly. Why would Hai Rui announce the signing of Tongning at a time like this? In that case, what kind of opportunity do you think is appropriate? Fang Yu asked. At least, when the people no longer hate her. Oh, in that case, she may never get the chance to join Hai Rui again. She has already been wrongly accused 100 times by heartless reporters and keyboard players. Fang Yu's reply was sharp and to the point. Isn't Hai Rui afraid of being slandered because of Tongning? Tongning has so many anti-fans. Hai Rui has never tried to please anti-fans. There's no other reason. It's because of the darkness in their hearts. When they judge others as ugly, they have no idea that they themselves may have a mouth full of buck teeth. When they deny other people's hard work, they have no idea that it's because they themselves haven't worked hard enough. They even think that other people's hard work has a strong background and unspoken rules. Boycott Tongning? Do you dare to use your real name to boycott her? But the incident between Tongning and Han Shiner is real. The reporter added. Chapter 211. Plus, there are some anti-fans online that have gone from condemning Cheng Tian to attacking Hai Rui. Fang Yu was silent for a few seconds. Everyone assumed he hadn't expected this result. However, Fang Yu suddenly turned to the reporters and said, 10 a.m. tomorrow, Hai Rui will be holding an official press conference for Tongning's contract signing ceremony. When the time comes, Tongning will be attending. Anti-fans and reporters alike, what evidence do you have? Bring it all out. Let everyone see if Tongning has killed anyone, broken her promise, and done any of the dirty things that you are all accusing her of. Hai Rui is not Cheng Tian Entertainment. We do not operate with the concept of vagueness. No unspoken rules will ever exist in Hai Rui. Of course, Hai Rui will never tolerate their artists being framed or humiliated. Since Tongning has already signed on, Hai Rui will definitely be open and transparent. Dear reporters, please be on time tomorrow. When the time comes, there will be an even bigger scandal. Fang Yu firmly expressed Hai Rui's attitude and forcefully placed Tongning into their territory. As long as it was their artist, they would never abandon them. They couldn't be like Cheng Tian, who would remove them at the slightest sign of trouble. This kind of intensity once again slapped Cheng Tian's PR and efficiency in the face. It made the reporters at the scene feel that Hai Rui's protection of Tongning was not just empty words. The netizens continued to curse, but not as fiercely as before. Some people had opinions towards Hai Rui, but when they thought about how their idols and celebrities all came from Hai Rui, they couldn't help but want to believe in Hai Rui and Tongning. Cheng Tian Entertainment was currently being looked down upon by the industry because of how embarrassing they were. Although various entertainment companies competed with each other on a daily basis, it was rare for them to be slapped in the face by Hai Rui within 10 minutes. Cheng Tian Entertainment had become the biggest laughingstock in the industry. Some board fans even took screenshots of Luo Hao's expressions and turned them into emojis to express their entertainment mindset. At the same time, the agency was afraid of offending Hai Rui. So, all the employees secretly placed resignation letters on Lan Shi's desk. Although it couldn't be said that Cheng Tian had completely collapsed, at least. In fact, it was even more serious than Lan Shi's headline incident. Only the anti-fans remained firm as they continued to oppose Tongning. The hatred that had been building up for so long had exploded. They couldn't be afraid just because Tongning had signed with Hai Rui. I wonder how Tongning managed to sign with Hai Rui. This despicable cheap model has no regard for human life. Even if she changes to another agency, she would simply be changing to a bigger fig leaf. I used to think that Hai Rui was a clean stream that couldn't be surpassed. But now, even they are starting to go downhill. He even signed someone like Tongning. If it wasn't for our fans, I wonder how much Hai Rui's shares would have fallen. I heard there's going to be a big leak tomorrow. Let's sit back and watch as Hai Rui clears the floor for Tongning. At this moment, Tongning was sitting beside Imo Ting as she flipped through the news. When she saw that her name was linked to Hai Rui and was being scolded by anti-fans, she lifted her head and looked at Imo Ting with an apologetic expression. Imo Ting did not turn his head, nor did he look into Tongning's eyes. But he knew what she was thinking, so he said, "Don't tell me you think this is all Hai Rui can do? Tomorrow, all you need to do is dress up and attend the event. Fong Yu will take care of everything else." "You still haven't told me who my manager is." Tongning put down her laptop and turned her body slightly. "The higher-ups are currently discussing," Imo Ting replied calmly. "What, you don't believe me? I'm a little scared." Tongning replied straightforwardly. Although she had mentally prepared herself, she still didn't have the confidence to conquer Hai Rui, especially when it came to her relationship with Imo Ting. What would Hai Rui think if it was revealed? What would the public think? Hearing the word scared, Imo Ting finally stopped what he was doing. He turned around and looked into Tongning's eyes. "It's rare to hear the word scared come out of your mouth, but just because you joined Hai Rui, does that mean you are no longer a model? Does that mean you are no longer Tongning?" Tongning lowered her head and thought for a few seconds. When she lifted her head again, her face was slightly red. "Doesn't that mean from now on, everything I do belongs to you?" Seeing this, the corners of Imo Ting's lips curved up slightly. This was a joy that came from the bottom of his heart. "I finally have an excuse to control you openly. You can't go easy on me." Imo Ting nodded his head. "I will only be stricter with you because I know you like it. So, can you rest assured and sign the contract now?" Lu Che stood behind the couple with a handsome smile on his face. Not for any other reason, but because he enjoyed watching a married couple fight side by side. Long Jie sat to one side and stole a glance at Lu Che every now and then. Especially when she saw him smiling like a fool at the couple, she felt her mood lighten up. She loved his silly look. Lu Che sensed the heat in Long Jie's gaze, so he lifted his head confusedly. However, Long Jie quickly averted her gaze and pretended not to notice anything. She was simply looking at the news on her phone. Regardless of everything, the news of Hai Rui signing Tongning had already caused a huge commotion within the industry. Especially when Hai Rui's artists attended all sorts of events, they were constantly asked their opinions on Tongning or Hai Rui's actions. But the majority of Hai Rui's people were able to express their opinions with a smile. Is there something wrong with Tongning's character? I'm not sure, but Hai Rui has never signed an artist with a bad character. So, if my fans trust me, I hope they can also trust my agency. Tongning. I really like her runway shows, especially her long legs. Now that they are fellow apprentices, I can see them more often. I'm really looking forward to seeing them. I've told her manager many times in private to go watch Tongning's runway shows. I'm speechless. How come the agency is taking so long to sign her? They're so slow. I'm so happy that Tongning is joining the big family of Hai Rui. Slap. Hai Rui's artists expressed their anticipation for Tongning to join the agency on different occasions. This showed that Hai Rui was extremely united. They were well aware of their position and were confident in themselves. Even if they were to compete, they would compete generously. I hope the agency can clear Tongning's name as soon as possible. I have faith in the agency, so I also have faith in Tongning's character. Anti-fans are the most annoying. I can't wait for the agency to show evidence and for the press conference tomorrow. Chapter 212. All of Hai Rui's artists, regardless of whether they had jobs or not, were harassed by the reporters. But, apart from a small minority of artists that were too busy to respond, the majority of artists, regardless of their status, expressed their trust in the agency and their expectations for Tongning. To a large extent, this displayed the demeanor of a leading company. Of course, it also represented Imo Ting's absolute dominance in the industry. Late at night, After a busy day at work, Mo Ting returned home to find Tongning working out at the gym in a thin set of sportswear. He was silent for a few seconds. He was originally afraid she would catch a cold. But after thinking for a moment, he returned to the locker room, changed into a black training uniform, and went to the gym. Tongning was already 26 years old. If she wanted to maintain her perfect figure, she would need to put in a lot more effort than a young girl. So, seeing her covered in sweat, Mo Ting couldn't help but feel his heart ache. He walked behind her, grabbed the dumbbells from her hand, and pressed her back against his chest. It's not wrong to have the highest expectations for yourself, but it's not this kind of reckless training method. I have no choice. I don't have a coach. Tongning leaned against Mo Ting and sighed tiredly. But if I continue to train like I used to, my body won't be able to take it. Mo Ting pushed her and placed the dumbbells on the floor. He then pulled out a towel and walked over to Tongning to wipe her sweat. How can there be no coach? I'll train with you. Tongning was stunned for a moment. She suddenly took a few steps back and removed his shirt. Not long after, an extremely attractive male body was revealed in front of her eyes. His perfect 8-pack abs were clearly defined and his muscles were firm. It was a healthy bronze color that made people obsessed with him. Seeing how bold the woman was, Mo Ting's lips curved upwards. You've seen it so many times. Are you still not satisfied? President Mo, from now on, I hope you can wear no clothes at home. Mo Ting took the opportunity to hook his arm around her waist and press his chest against hers. Do you like to watch? Who wouldn't want to see a view like this? Tongning asked. But only I can see it. Only I can see it. Mo Ting was satisfied with her possessiveness. He lowered his head and placed a kiss on her lips. After a while, he held onto her waist and said, Your upper body is strong enough. You should train your stomach muscles more. Do you think my body is not soft enough? I couldn't resist not wanting you. Yet you still took the initiative to provoke me? Mo Ting deliberately pinched her waist and explained, It's because it's good for women to train their lower abdomen muscles when giving birth. Then practice with me. Mo Ting lowered his head and pressed the tip of his nose against Tongning's. It's not like I'm going to give birth. I want you to give birth for me. Tongning's heart couldn't help but beat wildly. The breathtaking scent of hormones was right in front of her. With such a beautiful scene, forget about training her stomach. Even if she was asked to run 10 kilometers outside, she would be willing. Mo Ting looked at Tongning and lifted her in his arms. At a time like this, who would be in the mood to train? They went straight back to the bedroom and barged into the bathroom. The two of them made love once and again until their strength was exhausted. Then, they stood in the kitchen late at night and cooked a bowl of noodles for each other. Sitting at the dining table, Tongning looked at Mo Ting, who was wearing a nightgown, and shook her head. It seemed it was time to hire a female coach. Otherwise, if he really became a coach, 9 out of 10 times he would end up in bed. Mo Ting saw through her thoughts as he returned to his normal expression and cleared his throat. I couldn't resist today, but I won't do it again. Tongning tilted her head and glared at Mo Ting. Did you think I would believe you? As long as you don't pounce on me, I'll be fine. In reality, even Tongning wasn't confident. But to have someone like this, no matter what she did, he would stay by her side, help her tirelessly and enjoy being with her. Tongning's heart was filled with a blissful feeling. With this thought in mind, Tongning placed the egg in her bowl onto Mo Ting's plate. In our home, you are no longer just my husband and boss. You now have another identity, my coach. So, President Mo, you have worked very hard. Will you still be able to leave me in the future? Tongning shook her head obediently. I can't. Hurry up and eat. Get some rest later. I will be holding a press conference tomorrow morning. Tongning nodded her head. She couldn't wait to become better, to become the best, to become worthy of what Mo Ting had done for her. Because she wanted to be with Mo Ting forever. Tomorrow, she would set sail once again from Hairue. This time, she was going to successfully reach the top of the fashion industry. Afterwards, Mo Ting carried her back to the bedroom and lay in bed beside her, coaxing her to sleep. Unknowingly, Tongning's eyes began to tear up. Emoting looked down at her and asked, "Why are you crying?" "I've been treated cruelly by this world before, but now I am being treated gently. Only those that have been treated gently know how to love others. Did you think I would have thought of this before I met you?" Emoting laughed as he lay down and pulled Tongning into his embrace. "At first, I wondered if you would ever get used to this kind of calmness. If the 16-year-old Tongning met the 22-year-old Emoting, we may have argued and broken up because of our youthful impulsiveness. But the 26-year-old Tongning met the 32-year-old Emoting, we will simply support each other and live a long life." Emoting smiled as he lowered his head and placed a kiss on Tongning's ear. He then wrapped his arms around her and fell asleep together. This time, he could finally use his own strength to send Tongning on her journey. The next morning, the anti-fans compiled a list of Tongning's 3 crimes and requested for Hai Rui to give them a positive response. This was Feng Yu's message. He wanted anti-fans and reporters to present evidence to anyone that had any doubts about Tongning and to question her. As for the anti-fans' outburst, the incident with Han Shiner was merely the trigger. However, Tongning's frequent appearance on the top searches caused many people to pay a heavy price. So, those that hated her began to dig up all the things that she had experienced in the past and created hype over and over again. "Tongning, even if you have Hai Rui backing you, we are still going to rip off a layer of skin from you today. I have no reason to hate Tongning. Are you going to bite me?" "Tongning, there are so many people that hate you. You really need to find your own reasons. You are about to start clearing your name. Unfortunately, with me around, you will never be able to clear your name." Chapter 213. This was the reception hall of Hai Rui Entertainment. Amidst the flashing lights, Feng Yu sat solemnly at the podium. Beside him sat the quiet and low-profile Tongning. The reporters and fans had once praised Tongning for standing aloof from the world. But now, from their perspective, Tongning's low-profile and introverted demeanor were all for show. She was scheming behind the scenes. They hated Tongning like this. They couldn't wait to tear off her mask of hypocrisy and get her out of everyone's sight. They wanted her to know the power of public scrutiny. Feng Yu understood what the people below were thinking. So, after scanning the room, he said, "From today onwards, Tongning is an artist under Hai Rui. But I am aware that there is a lot of controversy surrounding Tongning. Since I've already made my decision yesterday, today, I will satisfy the curiosity of the media and fans. Didn't you all prepare a lot of questions for Tongning? In that case, she is right there. You can ask your questions now, but I have one condition. I want you to ask them one at a time." Most of the reporters had their notebooks filled with questions waiting to be asked. They couldn't wait to use their notebooks as exercise books and wait for Tongning to answer them. "I would like to ask Miss Tongning to explain the entire Han Shiner incident." The reporters knew Feng Yu was an expert in Tai Chi, so they learned from their mistakes and only asked one question. They wanted Tongning to explain the entire Han Shiner incident from the beginning. Tongning glanced at Feng Yu, and he nodded his head, gesturing for her to relax and answer whatever she wanted. Tongning turned her gaze back to the reporters, the live broadcast, and the audience. "I did try to find a match for Shiner's kidney. But, after terminating my contract with Tianyi, Shiner did not contact me again. I found out about Shiner's illness at the same time as you all. That is the entire story." "You're lying. According to Han Shiner's good friend, she tried to contact you multiple times, but you insulted her and even cursed her to die." Faced with the reporter's sharp questions, Tongning laughed and replied, "Han Shiner's good friend? Have you confirmed it? Have you seen her in person?" The reporter froze for a moment and was suddenly speechless. "But you did promise Han Shiner to save her, but she died. For you to say something like this, I don't think it's too much for me to slap you across the face." Tongning's voice was extremely cold. "Reporter, how did you find out Han Shiner died?" If you casually said the word dead without investigating the facts, then how did you get your reporter's certificate? If you investigate and still say that Xian is dead, then I think that you have evil intentions, because you are extremely vicious. Tongning, Han Shiner has already disappeared. Didn't you know? You purposely disposed of the corpse to cover up your crime, didn't you? After hearing this, Tongning finally realized what kind of rumors had spread about her in just a few short days. I'll say it again. Han Shiner is not dead. What evidence do you have? Why don't you show me the evidence? If I can show you evidence, will you kneel down and apologize? Tongning suddenly asked the aggressive female reporter. Kneel? Don't you think you've gone too far? Tongning? The reporter laughed in ridicule. She felt Tongning was telling the biggest joke in the world. I've gone too far? Have you ever thought about how the rumors you spread will affect me? Do you think I deserve to have my reputation destroyed? Fine. As long as you can show me the evidence, I will kneel down. There were so many people present who heard and saw it. Tongning and Fang Yu looked at each other. They then asked Yuan to push Han Shiner through the main entrance and into the reception hall, appearing in front of everyone. Han Shiner looked at the people that were relentlessly chasing after Tongning and said in a loud and clear voice, I am Han Shiner. As she spoke, she even pulled out her identification. Fang Yu knew how much these reporters wanted the world to be in chaos. The reporters looked at the woman that had suddenly appeared in the reception hall in shock. Didn't she go missing? Didn't Tongning deal with her? The world sure is big and full of strange things. I simply had surgery because my illness flared up. Yet when I woke up, I heard that I had died. Are the media brainless these days? Han Shiner's personal appearance indeed surprised the reporters. How could the person in question appear like this? Was this really Han Shiner? Seeing everyone looking at her like she deserved a scolding, and since she was Tongning's fan, Han Shiner asked Yuan to help her up. She then turned to everyone present and said, Right now, I really want to swear. Are you all crazy? How come I didn't even know I had died? Since when did I, Han Shiner, need you reporters to seek justice for me? Let me tell you, Tongning has never owed me a kidney. Since you all are so kind and charitable, why don't you give me one of your kidneys? As for my friend, she was created by Chung Tian's artist-director, Luo Hao, in order to frame Tongning. Didn't you want evidence? Here, I'll give you evidence. After speaking, Han Shiner gestured for Yuan to hand over the evidence that Lu Che had collected from the nurse. There was a voice recording, photos that were secretly taken, Luo Hao's contact details, and the nurse's bank account number. The reporters continuously passed it around. In the end, Fang Yu placed it on the big screen behind him. It was obvious. Everything was planned by Luo Hao and the media had been led by the nose. I don't know how evil the people that spread the rumor about my death have. All I know is, the media is an accomplice, Han Shiner said in an extremely sharp tone. If you still think you know how to write the word shame, then from today onwards, you will no longer have the face to continue being reporters. Of course, those shameless people will continue to use their cameras to harm others. Han Shiner didn't die and Tongning didn't do what you guys are imagining. Plus, she has never forgotten about my condition. She has already found a suitable kidney for me, and I will be receiving surgery soon. I know better than you whether she is well or not. If you continue to use this incident to slander Tongning, then I will cooperate with Hairui Entertainment to sue the unscrupulous media. When that time comes, you will have to bear the consequences. If you can't control your own mouths, then let the law do it. Fang Yu looked at Han Shiner in admiration. If this child recovered from her illness, he might actually consider making her his successor. He had only said these words once, yet Han Shiner remembered them all. Hearing Han Shiner's warning, the media suddenly fell silent. As for the reporter from earlier, her face turned red. She had promised to kneel down and apologize to Tongning. At this moment, she simply hoped that Tongning would forget about this incident as soon as possible. She didn't want to be embarrassed in front of everyone. But, however, Fang Yu remembered it clearly. Reporter friend holding number 29. Do you still remember what you promised Tongning? Chapter 2:14. I. The other party stammered out the word I. His face was terrifyingly red. I know in the current entertainment industry, the cost of creating a rumor is very low. That's why you guys have the habit of spreading rumors so easily. But not every artist is within the scope of your ability to create rumors. As long as it involves an artist under Hai Rue, we will fight against you at all costs. As long as Hai Rue remains in the entertainment industry, as long as Hai Rue is still number one in everyone's hearts, we will definitely fight against the unhealthy culture in the entertainment industry. Today, regarding the incident involving Tongning and Han Shiner, Hai Rue would like to make the following statements. Firstly, Tongning and Han Shiner are not related by blood and have no moral obligation to save her. Tongning has already helped Han Shiner find a kidney and has maintained her bottom line. Secondly, during the period of Han Shiner's illness, Tongning did not receive a single phone call from Han Shiner asking for help. At the same time, she did not ask a third party to keep in contact with her. Tongning only found out about the truth after the incident. Any comments that Tongning has insulted Han Shiner are considered rumors. Thirdly, the incident with Han Shiner has caused great damage to Tongning's reputation. We have already obtained evidence of the mastermind. Hai Rue will soon send out a lawyer's letter to ensure that this type of behavior will be punished under the supervision of the law. Fourthly, Hai Rue has issued a serious warning to many media outlets and publications. We hope the media will remember their responsibilities and maintain their bottom line. They will not blindly follow the trend and work together to create a better culture in the entertainment industry. This is the attitude of the entire Hai Rue. Fong Yu's words were clean and concise. His words were full of warning, causing the media present to tremble in fear. They thought Hai Rue was joking, but Hai Rue had already brought out their most serious legal weapon. The reporters looked at each other. Deep down, they all knew they were being used. But what could they do? The reporters weren't having a good time either. No one bothered to investigate the truth. All they cared about was whether the incident would be explosive enough to make the public feel refreshed. All they could do was run on the front lines, but they couldn't retreat. So, as soon as the truth was revealed, every single one of them looked at Tongning with guilt. What did Tongning do wrong? It was just that he was targeted, framed, slandered, and almost destroyed. Sorry. Tongning, we had no choice. I'm really sorry. We made a huge mistake this time. Luckily, Hai Rue set things right in time. In the future, we will definitely remember that we are reporters. Faced with these apologies that seemed to come from the bottom of their hearts, apart from mockery, Tongning couldn't think of anything else. When they want to smear you, they can blurt out any rumor. Once they were pressured, they would begin to feel regret and shame. Fong Yu watched as the media admitted defeat, and the reporters trembled in fear. He then turned to look at Tongning before changing the topic and joking. However, this incident has gotten out of hand. Apart from the media, there is another group of people that we have no choice but to pay attention to. After speaking, Fong Yu turned his body slightly to the side as the screen behind him displayed the details of Tongning's fans. On the screen, the fan was analyzing her journey, from being madly in love with Tongning, to humiliating her when the incident happened, to finally becoming an anti-fan. This was a terrifying change that she had experienced multiple times. Between the lines, there was only one word: retard. Every celebrity will more or less experience signs of turning from a fan to an anti-fan, and vice versa. But fans like you that have been circling back and forth like paper clips, I would like to ask you to stop following Tongning after this incident. It's not that you can't afford to love Tongning, it's that Tongning can't afford to love you. Since you've turned into an anti-fan, don't turn back around and slap yourself in the face. The media did not continue to pursue the matter, and the reporter from before was not asked to kneel. They understood that Hai Rui was giving them a way out, so they laughed along with Feng Yu's humor. Of course, the fans were just an exception, because Feng Yu was actually trying to lure out anti-fans. A moment later, a lawyer's letter from Hai Rui appeared on the screen. It contained the information of 10 anti-fans, including their real names. The media were in an uproar. They were shocked by the extent of Hai Rui's actions. From the media to the mastermind, from the fans to the heartless anti-fans, Hai Rui did not let a single one of them off and pursued them step by step. Hai Rui once said that the cost of creating a rumor is too low. So, it's time for groups of people to humiliate others for fun. Since that's the case, Hai Rui has no choice but to show their determination to defend their rights. So, it's about time these 10 people receive their lawyer's letter. If you can tell the truth, and if you have witnessed an unethical practice in the entertainment industry, you are welcome to report it. But those that use the internet to create sensationalism, slander others, and cause harm to others, Hai Rui will not tolerate them. There are millions of anti-fans, but there will come a day when they will pay the price. If you continue to spread rumors, it will only push the adoption of a real name system online. When that time comes, you will have nowhere to hide. I'm looking forward to seeing how awesome you are. Feng Yu's words were extremely forceful, but it made those that had suffered from anti-fans for a long time feel extremely satisfied. Above all, this was the first time Hai Rui had shown such determination to deal with anti-fans. It meant, from today onwards, Hai Rui would protect their artists in every way possible. This information was revealed with the permission of the police when they reported it to the police. Anti-fans, Hai Rui awaits your challenge. These words were Hai Rui's declaration of war against the anti-fans. Of course, with the intervention of the police, the anti-fans that had previously threatened to do something to Tongning immediately disappeared without a trace. Great. Mo Ting stood in his office watching the live broadcast. He was extremely satisfied with Feng Yu's performance. Those that had bullied Tongning in the past, those that were currently bullying Tongning, and those that wanted to bully her in the future. Did they think they still had a chance? Absolutely impossible. From today onwards, Tongning will be a sign model of Hai Rui. From now on, all of her work will be handled by Hai Rui. I hope our friends in the media can be magnanimous and treat Tongning a little more gently. The media were stuck in the middle of Hai Rui today. It was like they had been slapped in the face and invited to watch someone else get slapped in the face. Hearing Feng Yu's words, they could only nod their heads, that's for sure. Tongning will definitely become an international supermodel. Chapter 215. This was the first time Tongning had participated in a press conference for Hai Rui. She suddenly understood why Mo Ting was able to dominate the entertainment industry for so many years without being shaken. Because Feng Yu's hosting was enough to explain everything. Apart from Hai Rui, there was no other agency with such professional PR capabilities and such a domineering way of handling a situation. After the press conference, Feng Yu smiled at Tongning, hinting that from now on, Hai Rui would protect her from all aspects. Tongning returned a smile. Her gratitude was evident on her face. Meanwhile, Longjie and Lu Che were extremely excited as they listened to the press conference. Especially Longjie. Every time something exciting happened, she would grab onto Lu Che's arm and pinch it. After the press conference was over, Lu Che directly showed his arm to Longjie. If you continue to pinch it, my arm will be crippled. Boss's company is awesome, powerful, and professional. Lu Che knew there was no way he could stop Longjie, so he let her be. However, his expression was one of confidence. Of course, you should take a look at whose company this is. How could any black-hearted agency compare? Like this, I finally don't have to worry about Tongning's future. Lu Che watched as Long Jie laughed and cried at the same time. He couldn't understand how women worked. She cried when she was unhappy, but she also cried when she was happy. I can finally relax. So, what are you planning to do? What else can I do? I'm already so old. It's time for me to start looking for someone to marry, Long Jie blurted out. But as soon as she saw Lu Che, she froze. She was so excited that she forgot herself. Lu Che did not say a word. He simply looked at Tongning on stage, but his eyelashes were trembling. Long Jie sneaked a glance at him. She couldn't understand what Lu Che was thinking. So, her smile froze on her face. She wasn't sure if she should continue to hint at him. Lu Che didn't seem to like older women, right? Thinking of this, Long Jie's smile suddenly became a little forced. Afterwards, the press conference came to an end. However, just as Han Shiner was about to leave Hai Rue, Fang Yu approached her and smiled. After you recover and are interested in joining Hai Rue, you can give me a call. What can I do? Hai Rue's publicity department welcomes you. Fang Yu smiled politely. You have a lot of potential. Han Shiner glanced at Tongning and nodded her head solemnly. Since Tongning is here, of course I am willing to come. I simply hope you don't give me an empty promise. I'm curious. Why do you like to chase after Tongning? Because I also want to have a counterattack in life. Tongning has always been my only hope. I want to live like her. When it's time to fight, I will seize the opportunity, and when it's time to love, I will not hold back. Then you must first have a healthy body. Good luck, little friend. As Han Shiner left, Tongning gave her a tight hug. If I don't have the responsibility to donate my kidney to you, then you don't have the responsibility to clarify the truth for me either. I just want you to be happy, Ningjie. I will accompany you during your surgery. Tongning let go of her and gently stroked her hair, just like how Ting always gave her strength. This time, Han Shiner smiled brightly as her cheeks flushed red. She nodded her head in seriousness. In that case, I will definitely make myself healthy and return to your side. Tongning's heart was moved by Han Shiner's righteousness and tolerance. In this world, we face countless choices every day. But there are always some people that, no matter what they experience, would never hurt others and would never blame anyone. So, she deserved a better life. After the press conference, Fang Yu invited Tongning into his office and said, "The president has given instructions. Han Shiner must have hurt you a lot this time, so he is giving you a day off to recover. But, the day after tomorrow, you will return to your post and start your busy schedule." "I don't need a day off," Tongning replied straightforwardly. After a short pause, she continued, "Actually, I really want to know. Who exactly is my manager?" "Your manager is currently not in China. You will be flying to Italy the day after tomorrow. Your manager will be meeting you there," Fang Yu explained. "I understand. Tongning at Hai Rue, you can be yourself?" "Right now, I am being myself." After all, she had never been a noisy person. Fang Yu shrugged his shoulders and used his humorous body language to tell Tongning that although Hai Rue was strict, it was a loving family. Tongning responded with a smile. "I will cherish every day I have at Hai Rue." Hai Rue strikes back at anti-fans. Han Shiner's incident revealed. Hai Rue to Tongning's fans. "Can't love her, please stay away." Hai Rue slaps anti-fans. "Real name system will forever be your grave." In an instant, Hai Rue used a strong stance to reverse the damage that the public had done to Tongning. Like a strong gust of wind, all negative comments about Tongning were blown away. The anti-fans were afraid of being exposed, so they no longer dared to say anything online. As for Tongning's fans, they quietly withdrew from the circle of idols and shame and temporarily distanced themselves from the controversy. On the same night, news of a famous film star being involved in a car accident was released in the film and television industry. As a result, the media's attention was immediately drawn to it. The attention online decreased, and the trending searches also disappeared. Seeing the search results, Long Jie let out a sigh of relief and said to Tongning, "You've finally come back to life." Tongning stood outside Hairue and looked up at the top floor. She knew the person that had given her a new lease on life was her husband, Ting. August 19th had given her a new lease on life. And today, he had given her a new career. From now on, everything I have belongs to this man. I will live a better life for him. Hearing Tongning's words, Long Jie was both happy and a little disappointed. Who was she supposed to live a better life for? Tongning lowered her head and noticed Long Jie's disappointed expression. So she asked in a quiet voice, "Are you thinking of Lu Che?" Long Jie did not admit it, but she did not deny it either. If you really like him, then tell him. Did you think he would understand your hints? It's easy to say it out loud, but I'm afraid it would be awkward as a friend, Long Jie replied straightforwardly. I'm well aware that with my family background, Lu Che's family would never like a woman like me. Chapter 216. Tongning hated Long Jie's inferiority complex. It also revealed that a naturally optimistic person was actually more fragile. In front of others, she could laugh and joke around. But in the dead of night, it was easy for her to hide and soothe her own wounds. Let's go, Long Jie reminded Tongning. Tongning glanced at Long Jie before turning around and climbing into the van. Lu Che was a blockhead. Perhaps, in Lu Che's heart, the only reason he treated Long Jie a little better was because Long Jie treated him well. Right now, everyone in Beijing knows you are Lu Che's fiancé. You already have a lot more opportunities than others. Long Jie, don't waste them. Long Jie glared at Tongning as she covered her ears. Tongning's words were like a feather gently brushing against her heart, making it itch. She couldn't think about it. Her heart was in a mess. That evening, without any warning, a light snowfall suddenly appeared in Beijing. Tongning stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the snowy scenery. Behind her, on the big screen, the news of Luo Hao being interviewed by the police was playing. Tongning turned around and took a quick glance, especially when she saw Luo Hao leaving Chengtian in a sorry state. It was like all the grievances she had previously suffered had disappeared in a puff of smoke. Lan Shi followed behind as she sent Luo Hao off. However, at this point, Chengtian Entertainment was on the verge of collapse, so Lan Shi's face was similarly pale. Tongning glanced at the screen and turned off the television. She already knew what had happened to Lan Shi and Luo Hao. The once arrogant couple had now become the laughing stock of the industry, especially after being singled out by Hairue. It was like Chengtian had collapsed overnight. From now on, it was impossible for them to ever make a comeback. Not long after, Ting returned home covered in snow. However, his palms were still warm. He removed his jacket and approached Tongning from behind, pulling her into his embrace. What are you thinking about? You look so focused. I'm thinking about the future. Tongning turned around and replied as she lay in Ting's embrace. In 2 months, let's go public. Have you thought it through? Ting asked as he hugged her. Yes, you are too good. I'm afraid you will be snatched away, so I need to tag you. Ting did not say a word. He simply wrapped his arms around Tongning's waist and pulled her into his embrace. Afterwards, the couple took a few steps forward and landed on the sofa not too far away. Ting then pressed his body against Tongning's as he kissed her. If this was really the case, then they had a lot of things to solve. After they were done fooling around, Tongning finally leaned against Ting's chest and asked, Long Jie, do you think Lu Che will like of you? I'm not even Lu Che knows the answer himself. Tongning thought for a few seconds and realized Ting's words made sense. After all, that man's EQ was indeed that low. Tongning of long jia of tongning of imo of long jia of long jia of lu of long of imo of jia tang. He was, imo of ling tongning gently nodded her head, indicating she knew how to cook. However, before Imo Ting could take a few steps, Tongning held him back. I heard my manager is in Italy. Who is she? You will find out when the time comes. Tongning did not ask any further. She grabbed her phone and walked over to the window to give Long Jia a phone call. Of course, she deliberately exaggerated the truth. Although Long Jia warned herself not to fall for Lu Che, hearing that he had a high fever of 39 degrees and no one was taking care of him, she immediately asked for his apartment address and rushed over anxiously. Along the way, she lost track of how many red lights she ran. Half an hour later, Long Jia arrived outside Lu Che's apartment. After pressing the doorbell a few times, Lu Che finally opened the door. He looked at Long Jia listlessly. Oh, it's you. Have you taken your medicine? How high is your fever? Among the medicine I bought last time, there are some that can treat a cold. Lu Che childishly returned to the sofa. Whenever he was sick, his mind was in a mess, so he couldn't hear what Long Jia was saying. As Long Jia sat down on the coffee table, Lu Che suddenly laughed. You are too tall and sturdy. Be careful of my coffee table. Long Jia ignored his teasing as she pulled out a thermometer from the medicine box on the table and placed it in Lu Che's mouth. After 3 minutes, she took it out and looked at it anxiously. It really is 39 degrees. We need to go to the hospital. I don't want to sit in the car. I feel dizzy. Carry me on your back. Long Jia. Lu Che was at least 185 centimeters tall. Although she was tall and sturdy, she wasn't tall enough to carry a grown man on her back. Otherwise, I won't go. Long Jia was angry and amused at the same time. She suddenly felt Lu Che was quite cute like this. Perhaps his fever was too high for him to realize how childish he was being. Afterwards, Long Jia knelt down with her back facing him and said, Come on up. Lu Che sat up and climbed onto Long Jia's back without hesitation. After finding a comfortable position, he buried his head in Long Jia's shoulder and fell asleep. Long Jia only took a few steps before she found it hard to breathe. But, thinking about the person on her back with such a serious fever, her heart ached. Although Lu Che was torturing her, even torturing her, she still felt a trace of bitterness and sweetness. Luckily, after 10 minutes of walking, there was a hospital. Long Jia carried Lu Che in and placed him on a stretcher. She told the doctor to hurry and check on him before it turned into pneumonia. After being tormented in the hospital for 4 hours, it was not until late at night that Lu Che finally woke up a little. He opened his eyes and looked at Long Jia, who was lying on the edge of the bed. Coincidentally, the nurse was doing her rounds. Seeing Lu Che awake, she smiled. You two sure have a good relationship. Your sister carried you all the way to the hospital. It wasn't easy. Lu Che thought back to his unreasonable actions and suddenly felt a sense of guilt. Why did he bully Long Jia for being fat? Perhaps because his hands were numb, Lu Che moved his arms a little. But because of this movement, Long Jia forced her eyes open and asked, You're awake? Are you feeling better? Much better. Lu Che felt a little awkward. Lu Che was a little embarrassed. Well, I didn't mean for you to carry me here. I didn't expect you to be serious. But you are really strong. After hearing this, Long Jia was so angry that she felt uncomfortable. She grabbed onto Lu Che's shirt and almost kissed him to shut his mouth. The couple's eyes grew wide. Perhaps even Long Jia didn't know why she suddenly couldn't control herself. In the end, the couple separated and Long Jia said awkwardly, You're too noisy. Lu Che was still in a daze. Long Jia stood up and growled, It seems you've recovered. Let's go. Let's get out of the hospital immediately. I didn't drive, so carry me home. I can't carry you. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.